everybody? Welcome to Logical Plausible Probable. I'm your host, John Maddox, and tonight we're going to be reviewing the one, the only, Dr. James Tour and his response to Wannabe Dave, that guy who said he didn't know what he was talking about in Abiochem, to which the good doctor responds, boy, I'm top 50. You didn't even finish those attempts at organic chem. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I hope everybody's been having a great Sunday, a fantastic weekend, and is ready to, if you didn't get the opportunity to originally see the one and only Dr. Tour's lecture number 12 on Abiogenesis, we're going to do a review of that lecture. I didn't get the chance to watch all of it myself, so I figured, hey, why not Sunday night? Let's invite some folks to come join me and have a great time learning from the good doctor and hopefully being able to learn amazing, insightful things that he shared in this lecture. Hopefully, if you haven't been watching them, you will be inspired to go and check out the rest of them and the ones that are upcoming, because let's just be very direct, ladies and gentlemen. This is an ongoing annihilation of the status quo of talking points and word salad and propaganda that's been coming out of the Origin of Life community. And hopefully, as Dr. Tour has been giving direct calls to action and, imploring that his peers rise to the occasion, stop manipulating the data, not disclosing the data, the real underlying problems that are being faced in Origin of Life research, and above all else, taking the time to deconstruct the complexity, the cluelessness which they have in relation to what's actually going on, and not allow the ongoing hype and propaganda that's being perpetuated throughout academia, throughout journalism, throughout the evolutionary biology community, and people all around, to be honest. Folks are desperately searching for a materialistic explanation for our very existence, to which they're actually finding that there is less and less of a plausibility of these things that we call life occurring without directed process. And the irony of ironies is, as much trash talking has been directed towards Dr. Tour in this lecture, he has made it a very substantive point that he is only arguing the science. And if you Evo atheists want to run around claiming that he can't think for himself because he believes in Jesus, well, I hate to break it to you, but he's been dropping the mic in every single episode. And let's be honest, the vast majority of us only comprehend a fraction of what he's saying, and a good portion of the loudest and proudest Evos running around and the atheists running around on YouTube especially, they don't have a clue what he's saying. They don't understand a word because they refuse to go and learn from themselves. They refuse to go read the many books on the subject. The most recent one that I'm aware of, from Dr. Rob Stadler, The Stairway to Life, and Dr. Change Tan, they dive into this in great detail and explain it just like Dr. Tour's doing. It's just been going on for quite some time. And now it's time for the rubber to meet the road, as the saying goes. And or in Dr. Tour's case, his nano cars that win world records and such. They could be that too. But without further ado, let's get into this. If you want to join the stream, you want to be able to share your thoughts, things to point out to you, the link is in the description. I'm going to post it in the side chat here in just a second, and people can come in and join the stream as we're watching. And hopefully this turn into a good time. We can have some great insights. Everybody keep it lively in the side chat, and we will get things going. Looks like one person getting ready to join. Let me put this in the chat real quick. And what's up, Graham? I think it's the first time you've been in one of my streams. I know I've seen you before, but I'm not sure if you've been in a stream. How you doing?
Correct. Yes. Good. Thanks.
Have you been following the Dr. Tour lecture series, or is this like your first time? What's your insight into this?
Sorry, I'll just pause the. Yeah. I have been following all the way since the beginning of James Tour presenting this.
Awesome, awesome. And before we start playing the video, what's your initial reaction been so far?
Oh, he's a brilliant man. He's absolutely demolishing Professor in inverted commas Dave. Like that man is absolutely clueless. He is a brilliant chemical, um, you know, someone who operates in the field of chemistry and knows what he's talking about when it comes to um, inorganic chemistry. I don't think he's mentioned that term, but that's what it was called when I was at uni. And I'm not going to call myself a professor because I didn't finish either. But yeah, I mean, the points that he makes are just absolutely brilliant. They're nowhere near close to even making the building blocks that make the building blocks of the proteins and everything that you need for life. It's just they're so far off it that it's unbelievable that they can claim that they've shown anything. They haven't shown anything.
Yeah, it really is a yeah, well, and this is what I've been saying since the day that this was announced that Origin of Life researchers are furious across the globe at Wannabe Dave
Yeah,
because he inspired one of the top chemists on the planet
yeah,
to call them out. And
yeah.
they cannot accuse Dr. Tour of being a fly by night wannabe like Professor Dave. They cannot make that accusation to the man that they voted into the top 50 on the planet. So unless you're going to say like, are you going to go debunk his 150 H index? I don't think so. You're going to go like rescind all of his patents? I don't think so. You're going to go rescind all of his awards? I doubt it.
Well, they'll
If
try. Don't
and,
worry, they'll try.
well, I mean, they might, but I mean, not in the context of they can't do it from a public perspective. And
No,
he is
it'll be
calling them
desperation, and
right,
it'll
and he
make things worse for them.
right, and he's calling them out like there's and giving no quarter. But all right, we had a couple more guys join us. Jamie is changing his screen name like while he's been in here. What's up, Jamie? How you doing, man?
I don't know who Jamie is, but I heard that Chuck Norris kicked his butt.
What's up? And the one and only Tony. We know Tony always loves. He's a huge fan of Dr. Tor like the rest of us. Tony, how you doing, man?
Yeah, excellent series, man. Part 12 was awesome. I like when he gets into some of that, some of the protocells and Giovanna and all that crap that they did in the 1960s. Dave's just way off as usual, claiming all this stuff can happen.
All right. Well, without further ado, let's get on to starting this. We'll pause occasionally for responses and reactions, and then we'll get back into it. So
Yeah.
let me get this going, and we're doing 1.25. All right, let's have fun, yeah.
Impression that we're much further along than we are, and I hope to bring some clarity to that as well. And I don't mean any of my colleagues in Origin of Life any harm either. I really don't. I just want to bring some clarity to this field. Okay, with that, let's begin. In the referenced video at 19 minutes and 18 seconds, I was quoted. Miller and Urey took some basic chemicals that are presumed on a prebiotic earth, hydrogen cyanide, formaldehyde, and CO2, and they put those across a high voltage, simulating lightning. You can get some racemic amino acids out of those. But those racemic amino acids were racemic. Okay, that was in 1952. That was 2/3 of a century ago. What has happened in 2/3 of a century since Miller-Urey in other fields? Well, we've had human space flight. We have satellite connectivity. We have the internet. We have the entire silicon era of microchips, and we have computer technology. We have all of this. In the same 66 years, 2/3 of a century, we are still exactly where Miller and Urey were. We make a barrage of stereo-scrambled chemicals, nowhere close to even knowing how to make them and hook them together. They got to get hooked together in the proper order. We are clueless on this.
Yep.
And at 20 minutes and 23 seconds, it was stated in response to this, quote,
It's not surprising that Jim likes to talk about the Miller-Urey experiment, as it's a classic and a common talking point amongst creationists. This was an experiment in the 1950s that mimicked early Earth conditions and spontaneously produced small biomolecules like amino acids. Jim is correct that this experiment does not in any way demonstrate abiogenesis. All it does is produce the absolute smallest building blocks in living organisms. He is also correct to point out that the experiment produced a racemate of these molecules, not the homochiral mixture we want, or at least that would seem to be the most useful. And he is correct to imply that anyone who thinks referencing this singular experiment proves that abiogenesis is a done deal has absolutely no idea what they are talking about. But he then goes on to say, in this video and several others I've seen, that nothing has happened in the field since this experiment. This is totally absurd. Origin of life research is a thriving dynamic field.
No, it isn't. It is not. It's a failing field with no progress.
Completely dead.
Okay, so you know what I find extraordinarily ironic about that statement is he said that thriving field, but if you don't recognize there's been major advancements, then you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, Dave, and it's why I've tried to rebrand him as Wannabe Dave, because everything he says is what he wants to be true, and
Exactly.
has zero bearing on whether or not it's actually true. And as pretty much everybody in our community knows, Miller-Urey has not gone anywhere. In fact,
None.
it's been literally, for all intents and purposes, rescinded inside of the chemistry world, and it was actually it was like formally like, yeah, we can't really do this at a conference in which Miller was present.
Back in the 80s. Yeah,
Like,
back in the 80s, he admitted it was a failure. Yep.
Right. I mean, it's like, okay, folks, we've got to. The level of this goes back to House, and I think this is part of the reason that Dr. Tour is being so outspoken in this deal of like calling out his peers. It's like, guys, y'all are the one that have been allowing this propaganda to be perpetuated when either and are covering it up to kind of pad your own grant money. Of course, he's not saying that directly. I'm paraphrasing for him, but but it's reality of what's going on. Or it's either that, or you guys are incompetent, ignorant fools if you don't know this, because I know it, and other people know it, and if you're a chemist at our level, you know it, or at least you should. And therefore, if you don't, who are you? How do you have your positions? I mean, again, Dr. Tour is not being like that blunt as I am, but I mean, it's got to be going through his mind of,
well, he calls
like,
out.
Who are you people? Like, how are you even running around claiming to be experts in this stuff if you don't know this, or you're just incompetent fools? I mean, it's anyway.
Can we go a little bit further than that? Because they're spiritually blind. Of course, they're going to have to choose one of those two things: either deceive themselves and hide all of this truth, which is, like you said earlier, they're so annoyed with him because now they have a massive avalanche of evidence against their position from Dr. James. And this has now become public, and this has revitalized the creationist community, and it's going to, this makes it impossible for evolutionists to now publicly claim, and I'm using that in the broadest sense of Big Bang all the way through, to claim that abiogenesis is anywhere near close to showing anything like what they want to claim. So either they have to deceive, or they have to lie to themselves and pretend that it is, like Professor Dave does.
They have to just continue the hype and keep saying that, it can still happen. We'll get it to work on the prebiotic Earth, but they can't. Nowhere close.
You guys might be able to get your mics to stop echoing, or maybe I'm doing it too. But it's echoing a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this part 12, Maddox? Is this part 12?
Yes, it's 12.1. All right, let's get.
I can't. Sorry.
All right,
I
everybody.
can't turn my volume.
You can do it in the. Don't worry. Everybody, just everybody mute your mics. I'm about to press play. We'll go on to the next spot.
He must know this because he frequently boasts about reading all the papers in the field to try to understand what's going on. So the claim that there is nothing happening is perplexing and contradictory. There is plenty going on. He just doesn't understand it.
Well, I don't remember having said that I read all the papers in the field. I haven't read all the papers in any field. I read a lot, but surely not all. So if I said that, I apologize. I don't presume that I said it, but if I did, show me the reference for that, show me the video where I said that, and I'm apologizing up front because I have not read every paper on origin of life. You know, I find it interesting that someone tries to explain how the pieces formed and came together. And the person then turns right back to the Miller-Urey experiment, specifically saying at 36:23.
Now let's wrap things up with an exceptionally brief overview of where we are at with origin of life research. What do we know about how this happened? Well, we can start with small molecules. Everything before that is astrophysics. If you want to learn about how hydrogen collected to form stars, which then fused all the elements in the universe, and then the subsequent formation of planetary systems after enough stars went supernova, check out my astronomy playlist. Otherwise, we can take for granted that lots of small molecules existed on Earth shortly after its formation. The first step from here is to get small biomolecules like amino acids and nucleotides.
Man, if his abio playlist is, that accurate, I can only imagine how good his other ones are.
As we alluded to earlier, the Miller-Urey experiment in the 1950s demonstrated this to be no problem.
No problem. Still, with those facts present, I find it interesting when people speak against creationists and speak against creationism, because I haven't mentioned any of that in this video, and I rarely ever mention that when I'm talking about origin of life, and say that the Miller-Urey is a, quote, classic and common talking point among creationists, and then actually use Miller-Urey as a positive talking point for themselves. And how can one take for granted that, quote, lots of small molecules existed, unquote? Who granted that convenient luxury? What molecules are those exactly that existed? Where is the explanation as to how that was done? All of these things are being thrown out there. Where's the explanation of where all these small molecules came from? We don't see that.
They don't have it.
Why is somebody still showing Miller-Urey if so much has been done in the past 68 years? Might it be because it's just as I said?
2/3 of a century, we are still exactly where Miller and Urey were. We make a barrage of stereo-scrambled chemicals, nowhere close to even knowing how to make them and hook them together. They got to get hooked together in the proper order. We are clueless on this.
What I said in that video is that people still go back to the Miller-Urey experiment, and we haven't progressed very far. And then in that video, it said that this is a thriving and dynamic field.
Origin of life research is a thriving dynamic field.
Well, why criticize my points on talking about Miller-Urey when you go right back to Miller-Urey, the experiment that was done in 1952, just as I had said? It was dated in 3650.
The first step from here is to get small biomolecules like amino acids and nucleotides. As we alluded to earlier, the Miller-Urey experiment in the 1950s demonstrated this to be no problem.
It was said there was no problem at getting these small molecules. No problem. The racemates, no problem. I demonstrated that the enantiomeric resolutions that were referenced in that same video couldn't have been gotten as was claimed. And what if the early Earth conditions were not reducing but oxidizing, as what is proposed now by many scientists? Would the Miller-Urey conditions work? And how do they polymerize? How do you get these amino acids if they did form? And even if you did have homochiral systems, how do you get them to polymerize? How can you take that for granted? Because the side chains are more reactive often than the alpha amine. It was stated in at 40 minutes and 40 seconds in that video.
It has been demonstrated that recrystallization of a mixture of amino acid racemates with a slight excess of asparagine caused amino acids with the same configuration to preferentially co-crystallize. You get a solid containing only one enantiomer and a supernatant primarily of the other. All that's left is some natural filtration mechanism to separate the two and the emergence of autocatalysis in one. This is one way that a slight asymmetry can be dramatically magnified. So we can see that the chirality of biomolecules may have been implemented at any number of places throughout the process of abiogenesis.
This is wholly inaccurate.
Bunch of
I'm
crap.
not suggesting that the person on the video is lying. Not at all. Rather, that one does not understand the very literature that they themselves are citing. I explained the
ignorant.
very misinterpretation in the homochirality video.
Total hype. You see the hype by Dave right there?
That was too good. So Dr. Tour's like, what? You can see he's about to come out of his chair, number one. And then he's like, and I don't know if you picked up on what he just said. He literally just said that Dave didn't understand what he read.
Yeah.
And what's the
He's an
filtration
idiot.
mechanism? What's the mechanism, Dave? He doesn't explain it.
And he keeps trying to downplay the difficulty. He
Right.
goes, oh, we can get closer, so therefore we can assume that we can get to 100. No, you need 100. You must have 100. 99% is death. You must have 100, and he's ignoring that problem. He keeps making the problems very small and maximizing any tiny little advance that maybe could be imagined to make any sort of progress. He's an absolutely, I don't know if he's aware of how deceptive that is. If he's not aware of it, he's an ignorant buffoon.
Exactly.
Well, and
Dr.
Bart,
James Tour is far kinder than I am, but I'm going to say it how I see it.
well, true.
Yeah.
The
clowns.
so Bart just says 2 words, Donna Blackman. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, so Wannabe Dave was running around claiming that Donna Blackman was going to just, she was going to annihilate Dr. Tour. Well, apparently that hasn't materialized yet. But more importantly, I guess he was like pointing to her paper. Well, I think like many other things that I've noticed about Wannabe Dave in his debates against, creation in general, abiogenesis, etc., is I don't think he reads much beyond the abstracts. And case in point with Donna Blackman's paper that was published very recently, which I went and downloaded, read, and it's all about, they're solving the chirality problem, all this kind of stuff, right? Well, if you fast forward to the end of the paper, it's basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but we haven't solved the problem, and what we did has basically no application to a prebiotic world.
Exactly. No relevance whatsoever.
So it's like, Wannabe Dave's
hype.
like, oh, I see headline, abstract. We figured out a way to, create some things that are chiral. Woo! Doesn't read through, like, zero application to the abiogenesis origin of life research. Very ironic, but again, it kind of puts, continues to showcase that a lot of these folks don't actually go beyond the headlines. And when we call them out on it, they run away because they don't have any substance. Well, number one, there is no substance under the headlines, number one. And most of them don't even realize that, which is so ironic as they continue to double down on it. Anyway, let's continue. Anybody else got anything you want to say before we continue on? Welcome to the stream, Otangelo. I know you've been posting stuff in the side chat for folks. You got anything you want to add before we go on?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add that it's the same that people do in every area of life. People naturally just assume they only gather the slightest amount of information to support their biases.
Yeah,
and especially when you don't follow God and you're not submitted to him and you don't have the humility to admit, well, I don't know everything. I'm going to wait until I've seen enough evidence to be able to make a decision.
I would like to quote here Craig Venter. He said, "To me, the key thing about Darwinian evolution is selection. Biology is 100% dependent on selection. No matter what we do in synthetic biology, synthetic genomes, we are doing selection. It's just not natural selection anymore. It's an intelligently designed selection, so it's unique subset. But selection is always part of it." So what does that tell us? It tells us that on the prebiotic Earth, there was no selection. And amongst the jungle of chaotic molecules laying around, you had to select the ones which are used in life, and there was no mechanism to do so. How do you select the 20 amino acids used in life amongst hundreds and hundreds which supposedly were laying around there? There was no mechanism. And that goes also in regards of DNA, RNA, carbohydrates, and phospholipids. They were not readily available. They're all collected at one building spot and then started to complexify together. They had to be collected.
Dave says they can. You just need a natural filtration system, and then you can have it.
Well, here we are. We do exist, so it must have happened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it must have happened naturally because I won't allow God to be the one that, is
right.
You've just reminded me that comment from Craig Venter and so forth reminds me of Lawrence Krauss in the interview that he had with Ray Comfort. He likened the formation of DNA to the formation of snowflakes. It just happens naturally.
Right.
And you can go listen to him say, that's not his exact words, but that is what he says. that DNA can happen naturally, just like snowflakes happen naturally. No, snowflakes happen naturally because of the chemical bonds of water and how water will create a snowflake. It's just the chemistry that occurs. DNA requires massive amounts of manipulation. And Dr. James too has been showing this, the amount of manipulation that's required even by intelligent minds, if we can call these origin of life researchers intelligent, to get to the point that they've got to, that's not nowhere near close to being able to create DNA from inorganic chemicals. They have to keep buying parts to get as far as they do. It's just mind-blowing that these people, they're either completely ignorant, they have no idea what they're talking about, and they have the arrogance, the gall to say things like, oh no, DNA can be created by natural processes just like a snowflake is created from water. And
let me quote here
zero.
Robert Shapiro. He said, no sample of a nucleotide, the building block of RNA or DNA, has ever been discovered in a natural source apart from Earth life. Or even take off the phosphate, one of the 3 parts, and no nucleoside has ever been put together. Nature has no inclination whatsoever to build nucleosides or nucleotides that we can detect.
Yeah, Steve Banner says similar.
Yeah, and I think, Dr. Tour has pointed it out very nicely that, you have 3 binding points which have to be repeated millions and millions of times to have nucleotides all the same. And how do you do that if there was no selection to bind at the right place?
Purchase it from a chemical company.
What, ladies and gentlemen, case in point of the brainwashing that has been accomplished. Andrew, I just looked at Dr. Tour's credentials. He has degrees in nanotechnology and material science, but nothing in biology, evolution, genetics, or anything else related to evolution. Andrew, per your own admission in other streams, you don't have a clue about things below the evolutionary biology talking points that get spewed. You're talking about somebody who understands the fundamentals of what has to happen, like way before the stuff you're talking about. So it doesn't really have, if what he's talking about is not plausible, then everything that you're spewing as fact is literally the fruit of a poison tree. If you don't know what that term means, go Google that. It's a well-established principle that is used in pretty much everything. So you might want to go look that up. Let's continue on, guys.
In this series, there is not predominantly one enantiomer in the solid. It was a very small amount. As was stated,
it has been demonstrated that recrystallization of a mixture of amino acid racemates with a slight excess of asparagine caused amino acids with the same configuration to preferentially co-crystallize. You get a solid containing only one enantiomer and a supernatant primarily of the other.
But in reality, the very paper that's cited showed, quote, less than 1%, unquote, of the mixed crystals consisting of the one that the author wanted in a maximum EE of 22.3%. Follow the chemistry and track this thing down. But I'm looking at it and trying to track it down. So here's a cleaner copy of it. And here's what you find. They used a 700 weight % excess of asparagine was used, not a slight excess as was claimed. And then here's a quote from this article. Quote, less than 1% of the mixed asparagine phenylalanine crystals consisted of phenylalanine, and the maximum EE of the phenylalanine was 22.3%. So in other words, less than 1% of the crystal that formed of asparagine contained phenylalanine. That's not the way it was portrayed in that article. Less than 1% of it. So you have 99% asparagine and less than 1% of the thing that you wanted crystallizing on it, phenylalanine. And you don't know what less than 1% means because he should have told us how much, but he just said less than 1%. Less than 1% could be 0.1%. It could be 0.01%. It could be 0.00001%. We don't know. But when an author writes less than 1%, it just means it's terrible. But he never told us how bad. And we don't know what if it says maximum EE, what was the average EE? What was the common EE that was gotten? And at 1% of what they wanted in a mixed crystal. So there's only 1% and less than 1% and more than 99% of something else. That would mean that you just get a very small amount of what you want, and it's only 22% EE. That's far from homochirality. And what that would mean is that this solid containing only one enantiomer and a supernatant of the other,
You get a solid containing only one enantiomer and a supernatant primarily of the other.
that's again untrue. If you look back at that very paper that these people published, the supernatant would have been racemic to within the error of the measurement. If you have less than 1% at 22% EE that is crystallized out, the supernatant is racemic. The data interpretation in that video that I'm citing was utterly incorrect. You can't solve the homochirality problem. The Miller-Urey didn't solve this. So notice in the reference video, the very literature that was cited was grossly misinterpreted. So he's dead in his tracks. Small misinterpretations might occur, but this was an enormous misinterpretation. Hence, this cell assembly story is stopped dead in its tracks. And this story should just stop. It should stop right here, because he can't solve this part. Every slide was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, you can't. I think it's pretty funny. Like pretty much every video, at like every stopping point, you can tell Dr. Tour is just like,
Yep. It
is this
doesn't
guy,
work.
did this guy really do another clip? Like, is there is there more of this? I mean, I know he talks about like falling out of his chair, like kind of poking jabs at his peers of like, I know you guys just fell out of your chair when, you know, insert whatever talking point it was that Wannabe Dave was spewing. But it's like, man, you clearly didn't actually go and look at this stuff yourself, Dave. And as I was talking with Sal the other night about this, I am convinced beyond doubt that in multiple instances, Dave was either reading directly from or paraphrasing some news articles that I've read before when I've been Googling around. Not papers, but news articles. That hype that Dr. Tour was referring to, I think in episode 3, the hype of the propaganda in the journalist community that's being perpetuated by origin of life researchers, or at least not, corrected, right, when they get too excited with their headlines and such, and their verbiage and the way they phrase things in the articles themselves. I mean, I'm pretty sure Wannabe Dave has been just directly reading them, especially when you get to like some of the stuff about the underwater vents and such. I'm pretty sure that was like direct quotes from an article, but I could be wrong, but I would say it's pretty close. You guys, anybody wants to add before we go on to the next section?
Yeah, given how ignorant he is, there has to be someone else behind him. And I think what's going on here is the devil has overplayed his hand. James Tour has been speaking about issues like this, the difficulty of the standard paradigm in science in inverted commas. And so they saw him as a threat. So here's an attack on him. But they've just awoken the beast. and then now their kingdom's got more damage happening to it. It's just it's a foolish move that they've made, and I've been so enjoying this. A lot of the chemistry is a little bit beyond me, but I can understand enough of it to go, yeah, there's no way in the world that they're anywhere near close to showing anything. But this buffoon thinks that he can. Oh yeah, well, thank you for awakening Dr. James Tour to give this to us.
Well, for the ongoing lunacy that's happening inside chat right now about how Dr. Tour doesn't understand anything about biology, go Google some of the.
This is not biology. This is not biology.
Well, this is not. But I'm saying they're claiming that Dr. Tour has zero experience. Go Google some of the patents held by Dr. Tour that have direct biotech patents. How are you gonna you're gonna claim that the man who has biotech patents doesn't know anything about biochem? You're an idiot if you make that claim. You're an idiot if you make that claim.
He's one of the world's most qualified chemists, and he can speak to both organic and inorganic chemistry, and so he's the perfect man to bridge this gap. How far away is organic chemistry from inorganic chemistry? There's a chasm that's the further apart than the distance of one end of the universe to the other.
Yep. Tony, Angelo, you guys want to add before we go to the next section?
No, I will actually leave again because it's late already. I just came to say a quick hello here.
I appreciate you as always, D'Angelo. If you have any links you want to post, make sure you do that, folks. I would strongly recommend checking out any links that D'Angelo posts. He's got great content on his websites, has awesome discussions over on the God Talk channel, and has done a ton of aggregation of both creation of his own arguments as well as aggregation of the formal literature that needs to be reviewed and contemplated if you really want to develop your own knowledge of these things and be able to do it in a very organic but organized and structured manner. I strongly recommend checking out D'Angelo's website.
Cool.
Yeah, I just would like quickly to say something to Andrew Cumming. I mean, he says that Dr. Toole has not the right qualifications. I would say even if he would be a complete layman without any qualifications whatsoever, that doesn't mean absolutely anything, because today we have the internet and we have books, and so anyone that doesn't have a formal education can have a good education in regards of these topics. And so that means absolutely nothing. And also he claims here that consensus is relevant. No, consensus is invoked when there is actually no evidence for something. And that's precisely what is being done in regards of evolution. They have no compelling evidence in regards of macroevolution, so they invoke consensus. So that is also not the way to go. The only thing is, if he actually understands what is being said, that he analyzes by himself and then comes to meaningful conclusions. But just to look if someone has a credential or not, and to say, okay, this guy has a credential, he is a good source. That's not so. There are so many scientists out there that have the credentials but come to wrong inferences in regards of the evidence. So, hey, make up your mind by yourself.
Yeah, I like how Dr. Tor points out the yields of some of these manipulated experiments and how the chemicals, they're still not in the desired structures needed for life, and it just gets ignored. It's like the yields aren't there. It's nowhere close. It's being done in a pristine lab environment. And it's like, yeah, so what? They just ignore it anyway.
Yeah. Bye, guys. See you next time. Bye.
Good night.
And the other thing that I'd say to Andrew Cumming is you don't need a degree in biochemistry. Having a degree in inorganic chemistry is what's needed in this field, because you're trying to build towards life. You're not working in the field of life. You're working in the field of how do we make inorganic chemicals turn into proteins, amino acids, the carbohydrates, the oligosaccharides, and the list goes on and on. They're all building blocks for life, but they themselves are not life. He's not working with biochemistry here. None of this is actually biochemistry.
Yeah, just ignore it. That's what they do. Add more hype.
Yep. And this is what he's proficient in. He is an inorganic chemist. This is his wheelhouse. He's the perfect man to deal with this.
He's a synthetic organic chemist.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Perfectly his field.
Definitely.
There is a notable advance in attaining homochirality by autocatalysis that should have been cited in that video, specifically the work by Donna Blackman and Neil Hallbaker. So Professor Blackman is at the Scripps Institute, and she has studied in great detail this reaction. This is asymmetric amplification induced by the SOAI autocatalytic reaction. This is an asymmetric amplification in a reaction catalyzed by its own product. And so you see this compound here that is catalyzed by its own product, and it's an amazing reaction. Professor Blackman discusses how the homochirality of biological molecules is a key feature of informational polymers, RNA, DNA, and proteins on which life is based. Theoretical models and experimental studies aim to rationalize how one enantiomer of a molecule might have emerged over its mirror image in a prebiotic world, presumably in the absence of a chiral bias. The discovery in 1956 of asymmetry in the weak force led to the concept that enantiomeric molecules, long considered to be identical in every respect except their mirror images are non-superimposable, are in fact minutely different in energy due to parity violation. The parity violation energy difference, PVED, has been postulated to account for the original imbalance in enantiomeric molecules, leading to the observed biological enrichment towards L amino acids and D sugars. This stands in contrast to many origin of life proposals that say that that the direction of symmetry breaking may have occurred purely by chance from random chemical fluctuations. But after more than 25 years since the discovery of the COI reaction, that reaction remains the sole documented example in which amplification of a small difference in enantiomeric excess in the autocatalytic reaction can lead to a homochiral population. This is the sole example. And in over 25 years since the discovery of that reaction, nobody's found another one. Now I am reading directly from Professor Blackman's paper that was published in 2019 in the journal Nature Chemistry. Quote, the COI reaction remains the only confirmed case of chiral amplification in autocatalysis, and its chemistry is not amenable to an origin of life scenario. No reactions involving chiral molecules under prebiotically plausible conditions have yet been discovered. In the absence of such a mechanism, the propagation of an imbalance of enantiomers from PVED may be seen as an even more challenging proposition. Furthermore, in contrast with early calculations suggesting that the weak neutral force would favor the terrestrially dominant L-amino acids, Quack has concluded from extensive later work that theoretical calculations provide no direct relationship between PVED and the hand of a chiral molecule, as would be expected, for example, from the Delegg postulate for an L-amino acid world. It is important to note that the COI reaction is itself a singularity, not only in its to-date unique capacity to amplify EE, but also in its stunning autocatalytic efficiency and persistence, unquote. So this is what she cites. This is what she writes in her own paper. Then, when you go to the experimental section, in the supplemental procedure, you can see that she had to buy the aldehyde, and then she purified it by column chromatography, and then further by distillation. So there were distillations involved and there were column chromatography. It has to be highly pure. Remember, in that video, they cited a reaction where something was less than 1% of it was the compound you wanted. 99% of it was something else. This is highly pure. You see the extreme conditions that have to be realized if you're going to have amplification in autocatalysis. And they used diisopropyl zinc as the standard reagent to use. Diisopropyl zinc is pyrophoric, which means it bursts into flames in air. I've used dialkyl zincs, and they are hot. And if they touch water, you just get a ball of fire. In air, you get a ball of fire. So they use diisopropyl zinc, and they use toluene, which is not a prebiotic solvent. And the toluene was purchased in a superanhydrous form in an Aldrich Sure-Seal bottle. So they had to keep all water out of this. And they used a serum vial that was flame-dried, it says, and backflushed with argon. Where are you going to get a flame-dried vial? A flame-dried vial that is flame-dried so you get all the water off of it, then you backfill it with argon. And then they used a sterile needle, and they had to maintain the reaction at minus 12 degrees centigrade. So think about how exacting these procedures are. And this is the singular case. So Professor Blackman remains refreshingly circumspect in her analysis of her own data and in the projections that she makes regarding implications for origin of life. I wish more researchers were like her. She is refreshingly circumspect in her analysis and in the implications of origin of life. And you can hear her in her own words on a video that she did recently on her work.
So basically, we can calculate the energy that from this EE value just the same way that you could look at delta delta G's for any asymmetric reaction. And it turns out that it's about 2.8 times 10 to 2 times 10 to the minus 8 kilojoules per mole. And if you compare that, remember we talked about parity violation energy difference. That's 10 to the 12th to 10 to the minus 10 to the minus 12th to 10 to the minus 15th. So we're still orders of magnitude away, which would suggest that parity violation energy difference wouldn't be enough to tip us one way or the other. It certainly isn't enough in our chiral world today to make any difference to any of the reactions that we're doing. But there are people who have models to show how you could still pull signal out of noise if you have enough time and enough small values of alpha. So I think that I'm just going to go straight to the conclusions now. This probably PVD is unlikely to be sufficient to account for symmetry breaking, at least in the SOI reaction that we studied. And you're going to need a reaction like the SOI reaction, but very persistent and very efficient if it's going to reach homochirality. And so far, the SOI reaction is the only one we have. It's maybe more likely that we have to think of some combination of processes, not just a single autocatalytic reaction that would get us to homochirality. So that, and along those lines, a lot of people, our group included, are trying to find more prebiotically relevant reactions that could do what the SOI reaction does. So far, we haven't been able to find one. So that's kind of a holy grail for everybody that's interested in thinking about what kind of reaction that would be prebiotically relevant, where the product could then make itself and amplify EE.
Exactly, because it's not relevant. And you got a bunch of clowns in the chat saying, "Oh, well, James Tour doesn't. He's not an origin of life researcher. So what? He's critiquing this stuff beautifully, and obviously it's not working under prebiotic environments. So you morons don't want to learn anything."
This area, and maybe we can interview her on one of my future podcasts to hear more about her work. But that video goes on and just presses on ahead. At 37:39, it was stated that
nucleotides form from simple molecules like formamide.
All right, well, how do you get those? That what he's drawn is not a nucleotide, but a nucleoside, I believe. But that's minor. But how did he get that proper stereochemistry? What's shown in this picture is the proper stereochemistry. Nucleotides, it says, it's written, form very easily. They don't form easily. Let's look at what experiment he might be talking about. So here is, let me get my laser pointer here. Here's formamide. Here's formamide, what he's saying, and he's saying we get to here very easily. Does that look easy to you? Look at all of these steps you got to go through to get here. That's not easily done. This was done in a modern laboratory with many steps that are really hard, which we're about to see. And they did the relay synthesis problem that I spoke about many times, where they will make a product and never use that product, but just buy it. And what they made was racemic. It was racemic. And it was not even diastereomerically pure. The preparation. So we're going from here to here. Here's one of the steps that you got to go through. You have to make acrylonitrile, and then you have to make this aminopropionitrile. Just look at the process on this. The preparation of the cyanocetylene on copper 1 was suggested as a way to conveniently prepare and store it for use when needed. Copper chloride was mixed with potassium chloride to generate the Newland catalyst at 70 degrees. Then a separately generated source of acetylene gas was prepared from calcium carbide and water. Was there really calcium carbide on the early Earth? I've never seen that. Maybe there was. I have no idea. But usually that's made by putting a carbon source across a very high potential. Maybe there was. But somehow you have to have water dripping on that and that gas then bubbling through the solution that you want. How does that happen on an early Earth? We don't know. The gas was bubbled through the Newland catalyst to prepare acrylonitrile, which is an unstable molecule that needs isolation and storage to inhibit its polymerization, which was then subjected to potassium cyanide for 1 hour. Then 5 equivalents of ammonia in a 13-molar ammonium solution was adjusted to pH 9.2 with sodium hydroxide to generate the desired aminopropionitrile. So that's going from here to here. All of these reactions were executed in clean vessels and properly isolated prior to proceeding to the next step. This is just a sampling of the preparations that are difficult even for the most skilled synthetic chemists, preparing very simple precursors to a few of the many molecules within the building block class. And all of the precursors were racemic if they bore any possible stereoisomerism. This is what he's referring to when he says formamide can go to these nucleotides. That's what he's talking about. Does that look easy to you? Just one step, boom. Oh, that happened. Oh, really? Formamide just does that. How does it do that? How'd you get that chiral sugar, that homochiral sugar? How was that done? Because remember, a nucleotide has got to have, it would have a phosphate out here, but it's got to have this being chiral. It's got to have that sugar to be there. How does that happen? Never explained. So he's dead in his tracks again. And further, at 37:56, he says,
so getting the smallest building blocks of life is absolutely no problem.
Whoa! Getting the smallest building blocks is absolutely no problem. Any origin of life researchers out there would like to come on? You can come on my YouTube channel with me and go ahead and justify that statement. Are there any synthetic chemists out there that would be able to justify that statement? Show me where you've published papers on origin of life. You come on anytime and talk about how you could justify this statement that getting the smallest building blocks of life is absolutely no problem.
That was great. Whoa.
Do you mind if I clarify something for the benefit of CRISPR? Because sure. I think I'm being misunderstood on this issue of organic versus inorganic and biochemistry. And my point is, yes, this process does end up in organic chemistry. Once you start to get towards proteins and the greater development of these chemicals, you're getting into inorganic chemistry, but you have to start in inorganic chemistry. You're talking about a prebiotic earth, and the only way that they can get their organic chemicals is by buying them. Every time they try and produce them, they have a racemic mixture, which is not organic.
Exactly. But they don't want to hear that. They don't want to learn that. They'll just say, "Oh, just
CRISPR
go
doesn't
have."
want to listen
No,
to
he
what
doesn't
I'm
want to
trying
listen.
say. He
Right.
wants to go, oh, yeah, no, there's inorganic chemistry in their imagination, because they've borrowed inorganic chemistry from life.
Right. They're purchasing this stuff from pre-existing sources.
Well,
in the desired structures
they're
they
getting
need.
they're getting biomolecules. They're going out and buying the biomolecules. They're not necessarily inorganic. I mean, they're getting. I mean, organic's obviously just carbon versus non-carbon based, but they're getting the biomolecules that they're supposedly creating. So I mean, it's yeah. I mean, basically,
Yeah,
what's
it's
going,
like
basically
so
what's going.
CRISPR, what don't we understand? Because CRISPR's saying we still don't understand. What don't you understand, dude? They're purchasing.
Guys, what's going on is
Yeah.
CRISPR knows that, and he keeps trying to dance around because Andrew and other folks are asking him like basically to debunk Dr. Tour or like why he's not qualified. CRISPR knows that his little research assistant or whatever he is in some lab, he is barely above Wannabe Dave in terms of professional qualifications. So he's like trying to argue little minutia and language that's being used by people that are us laymen that are watching this. He's trying to get in zingers towards the panel versus because he knows what's he gonna do. Is he gonna debunk Dr. Tour? We're waiting.
Actually,
we're waiting for the mic drop. I mean, so it's like, hey, come on in. Come on into the stream. You can come on in and share your thoughts. But it's
Can I deal with what CRISPR just said? Organic chemistry equals the chemistry of carbon. No, here's Wikipedia, which is not a creationist website. Wikipedia defines organic chemistry as a branch of chemistry that studies the structure, properties, and reactions of organic compounds which contain carbon in covalent bonding. It's not just carbon.
Yeah, he thinks he's debunking Tor. You're a joke, dude.
No. He's arguing minutia. So organic chemistry is it's basically everything that has a carbon base. Like that's organic. Inorganic is everything else. And then biochem has things that are inorganic and organic that are working in unison for biochemical outcomes. That's the top level delineations. And like I said, as my point I made a minute and a half ago is they've got nothing other than to try and talk trash about minutia in the panel versus what Dr. Tour is actually talking about. This is what it boils down to. It's a distraction mechanism. It's an attempt to circumvent, and I'm going to wave my hand over here so you avoid the actual. You don't see the what's actually happening. That's all it's.
Didn't James Carter say that never mind.
All right, so let's go on to the next piece, guys.
I don't think any of them would take me up on this. That is a total misunderstanding of chemistry. Again, I'm not picking on anyone else's other videos. I'm just saying this one was so wrong. This is wholly inaccurate. All right, the story is dead in its tracks. An origin of life researcher publishes a paper, and there's a lot of hype around it. The press then hypes it up even more, and people just don't have the ability to go back to the primary literature and look at this and analyze it. There's poor relative stereochemical control. Diastereomers were forming all the time. There's no absolute stereochemical control, so there's no homochirality. It was all racemic. There's no accounting for the mass transport through the sequence. How do you start at a certain amount and take it several steps? They don't. They just go one step. It's a little blip in an HPLC. They say, oh, we got it, and then they buy that pure compound, and they take it on to the next step. A prebiotic Earth would have none of these luxuries. An origin of life researchers strap an early Earth with burdens that they themselves would never be able to bear. And the layperson, like in the video, are summarily misled. The storytelling should stop right here, but it presses on. More storytelling in that video we're referencing. Even though the video suggested at 30 seconds.
Okay, hang on. I gotta slow this down because I heard through the grapevine that somewhere around the 30-minute mark there is something to look out for. Let's see if we can pick up what it is.
756 that
getting the smallest building blocks of life is absolutely no problem.
It relies on panspermia. 3742, quote,
And we have even seen spectroscopic evidence of these and other biomolecules existing in space, which offers the possibility of them arriving on Earth already made, a version of the so-called panspermia hypothesis.
Well, this just begs the question, how do the molecules form? The periodic table is the same throughout the entire universe. Throughout an entire universe, it's the same. So regardless of molecules being in space or not, how did they first form? How did they form in the first place? We're talking about origin of first life. How did they form? So just because they're out there in space, we have to be able to say, how did they form? How does this happen? We'll talk more about this later on in this video.
Doesn't answer anything.
Don't give me this nonsense of, quote, spontaneous assembly. Molecules form mechanistically regardless of the speed at which they form, the rate at which they form. They can be spontaneous. There can be spontaneous non-covalent self-organization of molecules. But when it comes to covalent molecular synthesis in this context, spontaneously is the origin of life researchers' code for, quote, I don't have any idea.
Yeah, exactly. Explain that, atheist buffoons in the chat. Explain that.
That's a good one. That's a good thing to think about. That. Let's go back just a smidge. Let's listen to that again.
How did they form? So just because they're out there in space, we have to be able to say, how did they form? How does this happen? We'll talk more about this later on in this video. And don't give me this nonsense of, quote, spontaneous assembly. Molecules form mechanistically regardless of the speed at which they form, the rate at which they form. They can be spontaneous. There can be spontaneous non-covalent self-organization of molecules. But when it comes to covalent molecular synthesis in this context, spontaneously is the origin of life researchers' code for, quote, I don't have any idea, unquote.
Exactly.
So when they say it formed spontaneously, it means they have no idea how it formed. If they're talking about forming spontaneously something like this, they have no idea. They would have to show it. It would no longer be spontaneous. If they knew, they would show how it formed. When they don't know how it happens, they say, this formed spontaneously. Well, show me how that happened. You can't throw around that term lightly when you're talking about covalent molecular bonds. I'm not talking about orientation of molecules in a self-assembled monolayer, for example, or in a lipid bilayer. I'm talking about the covalent bond. Show me how that happens. Don't use that word spontaneous because it's your code word for I have no idea.
Exactly.
And
Good point.
And before we continue, I just want this is I'm going to say it in a more direct manner of what Dr. Tor is saying. And yeah, we all know they can't back it up, and that's basically what he was telling them to come back it up, and straight up indirectly saying you guys are full of bovine scatology. Like, you can't back up your claims. It's all hypotheticals. It's just so stories and a bunch of hand waving to circumvent the gigantic walls you're running into, and you're terrified of losing your funding. Let's just be honest. That is what's going on. That's where we are, and it's time to be, pull no punches. Hey, before we go on the next review of this section, anybody want to add anything real quick? Oh,
Just
man, Wannabe Dave has joined us. What's up, Wannabe Dave? How are you doing?
I want silence.
JB's having a good time tonight. All right, we'll go on to the next. Let's keep watching.
And then there's the sleight of hand. Are you forgetting something? What about the monomeric sugars? So when you said
getting the smallest building blocks of life is absolutely no problem.
You never talked about the sugars. Why? Because there's not even a good story on that one. The storytelling should cease right here. You can't make the sugars. You can't make your RNA. You can't make your DNA. It should stop right there.
Exactly.
Show me a prebiotically relevant synthesis of sugars.
They don't have any.
Any possibility.
They got nothing.
Chirality. Show me that. When you can't, the story should have stopped right there.
Yeah, what do you got, atheist? You got
one
nothing.
wants to build this car, but all he's got is rocks. You know, there's the car, and you say, make that car. You know, all you got are the rocks. From those rocks, you got to get all the chemicals. You got to get all the metals. You got to get all the chemicals to make the tires and the seats, and you got to get aluminum from aluminum ore. You get from bauxite. You have to get the copper ore. You have to get iron ore to make the steel. That's what early Earth is faced with. You can't buy these things. Remember that? We talked about that. So when you say in the video,
getting the smallest building blocks of...
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I think so far the only thing that Dr. Tour's gotten wrong that I've seen in comments is, I don't forget exactly what it was, what he flipped. When he was talking about the formation of aluminum, I think he said there had to be high voltage, and it was like something else in terms of what you're putting into actually cause the reaction to form, what we think of about as of aluminum. And it's like, really? He messed up the amps or the voltage or whatever it was, and that's what you guys are like, well, I can't believe he doesn't know this. It's like, really, of all the stuff that's being talked about, that's what you're going on about. Is
that's what they're nitpicking. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right. Okay, cool. So basically what they really boils down is you got nothing of substance, so you're going to try and play on one on one little thing, which was probably, given the fact that he was in the right, talking about the right thing, it was probably just a slip of the tongue. Anyway.
Life is absolutely no problem.
I don't believe that those that say such things really know what they're talking about. I don't believe it. You don't know what you're talking about if you're going to say something like that. And then you have to address the polymerization problem. So his step 2, the video step 2 is polymerization. Polymerization to get the biomolecules. But remember, they never established the monomers to begin with. They never established these. They never showed how to make the sugars. They never showed how to make, therefore, the nucleotides, because you couldn't make the sugars in any prebiotically relevant manner. They got the amino acids, but now you want to get these things to polymerize. Remember, they have side chains. There's side chains here. There's lots of hydroxyl groups here. You have the C2 hydroxyl here. How do you get these to polymerize when those are unblocked? You can't just say these make DNA or RNA. You can't. And in fact, you got the extra sugar here, so the extra alcohol. If this is going to make DNA, it shouldn't have that alcohol. But in any case, that's a minor thing. How do you get these? You got to have the side chains protected. In 3759, it's proclaimed in the video.
Next, we need polymerization. DNA, proteins, polysaccharides, these are all polymers, so some mechanism must have arisen to join the small bits together.
There he goes. Some mechanism must have arisen, unquote. In other words, he has no idea. But because we are here, there must be some way, so let's claim that we know rather than confessing that we're clueless. If we're here, we got here somehow, so we pretty much know how it happened. No, we don't know. We don't know how it happened. This is what you're supposed to tell us. You're supposed to tell us how these things polymerized, not to say, well, it must have arisen. No, you're here to explain to us how it happened. That's the whole thing about explaining abiogenesis to us. You can't just say some mechanism must have arisen. Well, yeah, somehow we're here. What else would you like to claim? You know, are you presuming something? Are you suggesting an intelligent designer or something? I don't know. What's the some mechanism? How about explaining that to me? The whole purpose of the cited video was to show us. The video never showed us how to make the amino acids and the sugars polymerize. Never showed us. Never showed us how to make the RNA polymerize. He's going to show us, but we'll tear that apart. All right, so polymerization to get biopolymers. So he's going to take this.
Before we go on, we get Sal Cordova just joined us. His channel's Evidence and Reason. Always go over and check out. He's got great stuff, awesome lectures. And for those of you who haven't been engaged or been watching these after the fact, so far, and I think he's going to do it for the remaining couple of episodes, Sal's always been doing after shows directly following Dr. Tour's lecture premieres. Sal, welcome to the stream. I know you've been in side chat. Have you had enough of just watching and not being able to share insights? Are there any Evos and side chat you want to give zingers to? What brings you into the stream, my friend? How are you?
This thing about polymerization is what brought me into this stream. This is a lot of what some of the best arguments of Dr. Change Tan and Rob Stadler. So it's great to see all these excellent minds arriving at the same conclusions. I'll point out that of all the biochemists and organic chemists and synthetic organic chemists that I know, I don't know a single one that disagrees with James Tour's conclusions. And some of this is really basic chemistry. Now, the interesting thing about what you're going to hear today, this is actually taught in Change Laura Tan's secular molecular biology class. She is showing the problems that must be overcome. So one way to actually learn molecular biology is to see all the things that biological organisms have to do to make, say, a DNA. But in the process, you also see why this won't happen outside of a living cell. So it's actually an amazing way. She found a way to teach molecular biology, but then also a way to teach the problems with abiogenesis and get away with it, because she doesn't cite, her lectures are pure science, just like James Tour. But she actually identifies all the chemical issues that the biological system has to resolve. And those are exactly the problems that would have to be resolved by a mindless prebiotic soup. So kudos to her. And so that's what motivated me to join. And thanks for promoting my channel. I'm going to be trying to just cover some of the basics of organic chemistry for the IT professionals that haven't had organic chemistry and the biochemistry. I don't think it's going to be that hard.
Well, that's awesome. I didn't get to see. I only got to see bits and pieces of this lecture. It's part of the reason I wanted to review it. I'm like, I gotta force myself to sit back down, and I want to get all this stuff because I know there's so much I might miss. Is he about to annihilate the whole clay surface RNA? Is this what he's about to discuss?
It's not this part that I'm interested. I just wanted to hop on before he got to the part where it has to be at minus 112 degrees, because even in my Leniger Principles of Biochemistry textbook, which is the textbook I had when I studied biochemistry, it has some of the diagrams Dr. Tour is talking about that break down RNA. And that's what I'm almost laughing about, because this is undergraduate stuff. He's not having to reference stuff that is really ultra advanced to make some of the arguments. Some of them are pretty sophisticated and are definitely at his level. But then there's some here, what's about to come up is stuff you would actually see in a biochemistry textbook. And in one of my after shows, I specifically showed the pages out of Leniger Principles that will correspond to what he's saying. And that's why I don't see biochemists, organic chemists, synthetic chemists critiquing, saying that he's just outrightly wrong, because some of this is basic chemistry. It's also the basic molecular biology Dr. Tan is teaching. And, what's there to critique? The only place that abiogenesis is getting so much promotion is in the press and in the abiogenesis articles that are really hype.
Well, the point I made this point earlier, of like, when I've said pretty much every one of your streams and all the stuff I'm doing, it's the origin of life researchers are really pissed off at Wannabe Dave right now, because unless they want to all of their peers, and I don't just mean inside of OOL, I mean like across the field of academia, unless they want to like formally rescind or debunk some of these things that you're talking about, like this is undergrad level stuff. But what is the point? The understandings that we are being taught on an undergrad level debunk or block them from their train of thought being plausible. So it's like, hey guys, you either have to be like, yeah, that stuff we teach the freshmen is totally wrong, or be like, well, I didn't know that. I mean, that's your choices, right? At this point. And it's like, of course, they're not going to do either one, so they're going to be as quiet as possible, I think. I mean, it's...
Yeah. So what ends up happening is what they do is they'll actually teach really good chemistry at the undergrad level, but then they never connect the dots to show that it falsifies all the claims of the abiogenesis industry. That's the one step that they won't do. And they're professors that, like Larry Moran, who's just just kind of a totally militant atheist, anti-ID. He teaches biochemistry. And I posed all these questions. Actually, that would be an interesting, he's retired now. I don't know if he's blogging on this, but he is he's a tenured professor of biochemistry. He's taught it for decades, and he hates ID. I don't know that he's come out and criticized Dr. Tour. That would be an interesting blog to cover, because if he's not saying anything, that's also telling me Dr. Tour is really landing some serious punches, because Larry Moran is not going to let him get away with saying chemistry stuff that's wrong. So I should, if people will visit the Sandwalk blog, that'd be interesting, because when the critics like that, who are biochemists or other organic chemists, if they're not able to counter this, this is telling me this is solid stuff, and I'm confident it is. I'm confident it is.
All right, well, let's get into the polymerization to get biopolymers. Let's see what's going on next.
This nucleotide now, and it is suggested at 3811.
This likely happened first with ribonucleotides, as these have been demonstrated to polymerize on hot clay to produce RNA.
Well, if you're going to use a ribonucleotide, where did you get the ribo part? Where did you get the stereochemical homochiral sugar, ribose? You can't have the ribonucleotide till you have ribose. And if it's not homochiral, it's not ribose. You have to solve the homochirality problem for that. Yet the video skips the point via fast talking. The story should end here, but he presses on.
Actually, there's a slight error. Hang on.
On hot clay, so you can take.
Dr. Tur actually made a slight misstatement, and it's forgivable. There are D-riboses and L-riboses, so he can correct that. That's just a misstatement. But I just so other people don't pounce on him.
Take a RNA nucleotide, a ribonucleotide, and you can put it on hot clay, and you can make RNA.
These have been demonstrated to polymerize on hot clay to produce RNA.
Oh, really? Hot clay. How hot? I'm wondering, how hot is that clay? Well, is it hotter than minus 80 degrees centigrade? Is it warmer than minus 112 degrees Fahrenheit? You go right back to what's published on the Sigma Aldrich page for, this is a company that sells RNA. RNA from the website tells us that RNA is much less stable than DNA due to its chemical structure. RNA is subject to autocatalysis as well as degradation by RNases. Well, there's no RNases on an early Earth, so we don't have to worry about that. But this is what we got to worry about. That hydroxyl, that 2-hydroxyl, that hydroxyl and the 2-carbon coming and attacking that phosphate, and whoops, there we go, broken RNA. Well, how does that happen? At what temperatures does that start happening? Above minus 112 Fahrenheit. The 2-hydroxyl group of RNA can lead, I'm quoting, to autocatalytic degradation, quoting from the website of the company that sells this stuff, which in turn, under the right conditions, lowers the quality of the useful oligonucleotide. For short-term storage, single-stranded RNA nucleotides should be stored in a TE buffer. We showed the structure of that buffer before, at minus 80 degrees centigrade. So it's got to be in a buffer, kept at minus 80 degrees centigrade. That's what you got to do. But you want to make that on a hot clay? How well would it be made on a hot clay? And what kind of clay did they use? Well, let's look up the paper. Let's go to the primary literature and see what they used. Here's a paper, Prebiotic RNA Synthesis by Montmorillonite Catalysis. And so they start with vol clay, which is a commercial clay which might contain other additives. I went to the website to really understand, what is vol clay? Is it clay that you've gotten that you sell in its native state, or have you pre-treated it? I don't know. It may not be native clay. Why don't you just go out and find some clay and try this? Well, they didn't just take vol clay and do this. Look at what they did with vol clay. It was treated with 0.5 molar HCl, 50 mLs by continuous stirring at 4 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes. At the end of each treatment, excess acid was removed by centrifugation. Where'd you get a centrifuge on early Earth? And decanting the supernatant. Fresh acid, 50 mils, was added, and the montmorillonite pellet, and the treatment was repeated twice more. The acid-treated, that's H plus montmorillonite, was washed with 100 mils of deionized water at 4 degrees centigrade for 30 minutes with constant stirring. So we're going to have this clay where it can get to 4 degrees centigrade, and then later it's going to get hot. Interesting. At the end of the washing, excess water was separated by the centrifuge at 3,500 RPM. Were you going to spin something at 3,500 RPM on an early Earth? And decanting of the supernatant. Washing with water 100 mLs was repeated 3 times. The protonated montmorillonite slurry was added to water 1,000 mLs, and to this was added 45 mils of wet anion exchange resin. Where do you get an anion exchange resin on early Earth? To remove the residual HCl. The mixture was stirred for 30 minutes. pH was measured at 3.0 plus or minus 0.2. The anion exchange resin was removed by filtration using a stainless steel sieve. Amazing early Earth. And the protonated montmorillonite slurry was removed and freeze-dried. 1 gram of the protonated montmorillonite was suspended in 100 mils of deionized water and titrated with 0.02 molar sodium hydroxide, lithium hydroxide, or KOH at pH 7. The water was separated by centrifugation at 3,500 RPM, there's that centrifuge again, and lithium, sodium, and potassium montmorillonite pellets were freeze-dried. Wow, freeze-drying, you need a vacuum pump for that. I wonder where how that happened on an early Earth. That's the clay that they use. It's not clay that you got from under a rock. Then you can't just use the nucleotide that you had showed us. Can't do it. You got to use an activated nucleotide. So you got to have an imidazole to activate this. Now look at how he got that imidazole on there. So there's the nuclear base, there's the ribose, none of which was explained in the video how we could get those. And here's what you had to do.
So before we get to, I mean, because everything he's talking about here is very important and it goes into great detail. Looks like it's going to go into great detail. I didn't hear all this. The fact that people in chat right now are not understanding why Dr. Tour is so mind blown at what this is, like, what the heck does this have to do with what is remotely plausible in the prebiotic Earth? I mean, Andrew, for one, is
that's a fool.
Is saying stuff like they were just being careful.
Oh yeah. So
okay, they spun it. They spun it at 3,500 RPMs. 3,500 RPMs. What mechanical device or what naturally occurring
centrifuge
is going to cause something to spin in a controlled manner in a fixed test tube at 3,500 RPMs for an extended period of time? Then how geographically in the same location is the temperature going to go from -4 to 112?
Under a rock.
That is not remotely plausible to happen. And if you say, oh, well, things were different on the early Earth, okay, again, explain how it is remotely coherent to argue that in the timeline that's allowed before these RNAs break down because they have a very relatively short half-life, before they just disintegrate. Please explain how it goes from that temperature, like -4 to 112. I mean, where is this? It's not even remotely plausible that actually that happens.
And these clays that wouldn't be available on the early Earth.
Yeah,
that have been all chemically prepared beforehand.
It goes so far to the extreme of just like anybody who thinks that this is remotely plausible in terms of being relevant to prebiotic early Earth environments. You're turning off your brain. You are refusing to actually do any level of critical thinking skills. It's amazing.
Yep.
Let's see. Jamie, you and Graham have been being quiet. You got anything you want to add real quick before I press play?
I like science.
At the moment, I have nothing to add.
All right, awesome. We'll go on. I think Graham and George are over there doing side chats, so we'll keep going.
To put that imidazole on there. What he did is he took a mixture of the 5-mononucleotide AMP, he calls it, and imidazole, which he bought, and dissolved that in DMF. Where do you get dimethylformamide on an early Earth? And that's a human-made solvent. In 50 ml flask, and the solvent was evaporated to near dryness at reduced pressure. Where'd you get that vacuum pump? The evaporation was repeated twice with DMF to remove residual water. Then again, it says he used DMF, used DMSO, that dimethyl sulfoxide. That's another human-made solvent. And then 2,2' dithiopyridine. Where do you get that on an early Earth? And triphenylphosphine. Where do you get that on an early Earth? It's easy to these days. You just order from the manufacturer. And then he used triethylamine. That's TEA, triethylamine. Where do you get that on an early Earth? The resulting product was removed from the clear yellow reaction mixture as a precipitate by adding the reaction mixture drop by drop to a solution of sodium perchlorate. Quite a chemical store on early Earth. In a mixture of ether, acetone, and triethylamine stirring at the same time. Ether is human-made materials there. I mean, the stirring was continued for 2 hours and goes on and on. He uses centrifuge, he uses ether, he uses a vacuum desiccator, and then he gets his more than 99% pure material by HPLC. So he had to get it really pure. How do you get things really pure on an early Earth? You say, well, it doesn't matter. No, it really, really matters in this sort of thing. Because these are condensation polymerizations. These function under something called the Carruthers equation. If you just have a little bit of mess in there, that terminates the polymerization. So you had to use really pure material here, purified on an HPLC. How was that done on an early Earth? It says in the paper, wide ranges of activating groups are produced from hydrogen cyanide under plausible prebiotic Earth conditions. Well, why didn't you use those to show us that? Why not? Now, nucleobases can form under prebiotic type conditions, but again, this is often using the relay game, which we've explained before. And then...
Sal, do you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, yes. I have a graph. I'm going to, maybe just as a prelude to the rest of what he's saying, and he's already pointed out some things, I have a graph from my chemistry book since I referred to it, and I'm going to point out some things, and we'll see why he's going, why all of these synthetic reactions need all these steps. Maybe the way to understand it is if we've ever done, you know, when we buy things from the store and it requires assembly, sometimes you can connect the wrong part. You can connect the wrong parts the wrong way. You connect something to another part that it's in the wrong orientation, or it's connected to the totally wrong part. So all these steps that he's describing, with not just the purified chemicals, but with adding these chemicals and then removing it, it's to orient the parts. So when you're assembling something, you're orienting the parts and then connecting it. Because otherwise, if you start trying to force, you know, the thing is, a lot of these chemicals are almost like Velcro. They'll just stick. You bring them close enough together, and they'll stick together. So all that stuff that he's doing and all the purification is so you get the right part to connect in the right orientation. So I will point the reader to, this is a diagram, figure 8.6 from Leningrad Principles of Biochemistry. This was my textbook. And Dr. Tour is going to allude to this. You saw where he's pointing to this phosphate group on the nucleotide. And he's saying, oh, you need protection here. That's with the imidazole. Because what will happen is if you don't protect the positions, you'll start getting the phosphate group to go to the wrong place. Here's one example that it's not at the 5' position. Instead, it could appear at the 2' or the 3', or you get one of these messes here. You know, at least the reason I show this diagram is you can visually see, just imagine this is the wrong part going in the wrong place. And what he's emphasizing is what's going to be worse. What if it's not a phosphate group? What if you have an impurity connecting to these locations? And Dr. Carter pointed this out. So I'm just trying to give kind of a, you know, kind of stepping back and say, guys, this is why they want purified chemicals, because this is like, you know, these things stick together very easily. And that's why you want to purify it and then do all these steps of what he calls protection and deprotection, because all of this is trying to get everything to orient in the right spot. So it's very similar to the assembly process when you're trying to, say, build a car, except the exception is with the car, you can, things fit well and you can screw them together. In the chemical world, a lot of things will just spontaneously. The one thing that is spontaneous is you get a lot of connections that you don't want. That's what's really bad. At least when you're trying to assemble a car, some of the parts will tell you, hey, you can't really fit this here. So just bear that in mind. And so this is what all of this chemistry, this is what the synthetic chemists are doing, is they're trying to orient and prevent the wrong reaction from happening. And it's very dishonest to represent this as what happens in a prebiotic world, because you have all the things that will just, what really happens spontaneously is you get all these bad parts in the wrong position, and they won't form DNAs that are usable to be read.
Well, and one of the things, we'll go on here a second. One of the things you were talking about last night in relation to the beta sheets and the alpha helices and the chirality problem and how it just blows out the protein. And, there's so many different, that's just one example of many, right?
Right. It's going to be worse with the DNAs and RNAs. It's going to be far worse with the DNAs and RNAs. Far worse.
Right. It's like there's error correction and there's allowance for and robustness and things that are allowed for in the protein synthesis side of the equation. But on the flip side, you have just complete meltdown. And I think also people forget about like all the different little, in terms of what we observe in an extant perspective, there's all sorts of additional little proteins that are running around keeping things working. Keeping things chiral, like doing the flips and all this kind of stuff. And we totally forget about that. Or actually, I think a lot of people don't even forget about it. They don't even know about it. They're unaware of that. That's those processes that are going on in order for things that we take for granted to be executed. Go ahead, Sal.
Oh, breaking news. Larry Moran, that biochemist I mentioned, he's like one of the most pro-Evo, anti-ID. He's really militant. He always refers to ID proponents as idiots. He's just been teeing off on us. Utter silence on his part. This is his chance to challenge Dr. Tour, because he never drops an opportunity to try to just go after people. And why is he so silent now? So what is he talking about instead? ENCODE. And I've already pointed out we've moved far beyond ENCODE. This is telling me Dr. Tour is really landing punches.
I would imagine so. Jamie, I know before we, I think you got a question before we go on to the next section. What do you have a question?
Yeah, when you were talking about the and with the diagram you brought up before, would they have to use like really pure solutions or anything? Like, what are the processes to maintain what they're looking to make connections or whatever? What are they?
Oh, can you repeat the question? I think I got most of it.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of processes they use to do the different connections that you brought up in that diagram.
Right. There are various processes that are outlined in Change Tan's book, and actually it's the same diagram similar diagram that Dr. Tour showed in one of his episodes, and then also in one of my after shows. It's this one where you, I don't know if you remember the one with the glass bead, and you put this DMTO nucleotide. And it's really funny because you have to stop the reaction, change the, you have to stop the reaction, remove all of the old other chemicals, put new chemicals, restart the reaction. So you have all these steps, and they're like 5 or 6 steps. And if you don't do them in the right order, you're not orienting and you're not orienting and getting the things to connect where they are. Some of the way it's done is kind of brute force. You actually plug the holes where you don't want something to connect, and then you just kind of hope and pray random chance will eventually get it to fit to the one hole that's open. And then you stop the reaction, change. And he was talking about, okay, now this is the step where you wash all that off. And by the way, this is all happening in the solid phase because you don't want water because you're not going to polymerize, because that's the paradox. You can't have life with
not only are you
water.
like solutions, but you might have to like wash it or multiple times or something. And
you have to alternate between dry and wet states. alternate between dry and wet states. And
Yeah,
these are
sir.
some of the steps. That's just to add one nucleotide, to the polymer. And then you have to rinse and repeat, literally, to add a second one. This is a very slow, painstaking process. Go on, Jamie, I interrupted you.
No, I don't know for sure. I was just remembering some things like in basic chemistry, but like, where you have to like rinse something with really pure, whatever, like whether it be just something, it's not a matter of just like moving it somewhere else. It could be, seems like making sure like to get it so pure, like you have to use super pure chemicals to hold it and then when you want to have to switch something, you'd have to rinse it to make sure you get rid of all the byproducts or whatever. And then I imagine temperature could be involved in some steps. It's just insane to think anything close to that could happen kind of randomly in some sort of natural environment. It's just ridiculous.
Exactly.
I actually have the diagram that Dr. Tour used. It's very similar. This is the glass bead here. And again, they're doing a lot of plugging of the holes you don't want to accidentally connect. So that's what he calls protection. And so then it goes through these steps. Somewhere here you wash. So you start in the dry state because life needs water, but also life would prevent DNAs from forming spontaneously. So you have a very nasty paradox here. It's called the water paradox. You can't live with it. You can't live without it, so to speak. And so you start in this dry phase, and then you do a chemical reaction. Somewhere here you wash, and then you add more. You wash off some of the chemicals you don't want. You add all the new pure chemicals you do want, and you do some more reactions. And that's just to add one. So you see this is the beginning of the DNA. So just to add one monomer, you have to go through this cycle. And it's just going to be a nightmare to try to build DNA this way. And in the segment where he had the CISS, the chiral-induced selective symmetry, he points out that this man-made cycle here can only make 100 nucleotides. It's going to fail. You'll only get 50% yield after 100 nucleotides. The human genome is able to replicate with high fidelity at 3.3 gigabases and can do it in a matter of like 20 minutes. It took Craig Ventnor a year to build 500,000 bases with this process. A year. And he didn't even get it right. It took him another year to find out where he had an error. It took him 2 years.
Yeah, those little elements of substance to the macro questions that are being supposedly answered. In reality, of course, they're not. They're getting further away, but it's amazing how these things are just like, oh, well, that's not that big a deal. We'll figure that out someday. And it's like, no, we have pretty definitive proof that you have to account for this. That's what always amazes me. Like, oh, well, we'll figure it out. It's like, we will? How? You have to come up with something plausible. All right, let's keep going.
High hopes.
Well, true.
And these are the reactions. So they put it on the clay and they do all of these things. All these things in red are very exacting conditions. Very exact. It's all very exacting. 24 degrees, this. And then finally, when he's done, just go right here. It's just he had to extract it 4 times with an organic solvent. All right? Acetonitrile. He had to extract it with acetonitrile. So he had to get that solvent and extract it with it. Why did he have to extract the RNA from the clay with an organic solvent? Why didn't he just wash it off? Because it doesn't just come off. Because the RNA is negatively charged, the clay is positively charged, and it sticks. And it doesn't come off. It doesn't give it up. So what does he do? He treats it with acetonitrile, and he does this over and over again, overnight, just with this organic solvent. So this isn't prebiotically relevant anymore. It has no relevance. How can you claim this? It has no relevance anymore. But even we'll give you that. I'll just give it to you. Now look what happens. Bridging the prebiotic and RNA worlds, prebiotic RNA synthesis on clay. So these folks did a synthesis on clay, and what they tell us, thankfully, is they tell us how well it polymerized. You see here's the 2' hydroxyl. Here's the 3' hydroxyl. You need it to polymerize between the 3' hydroxyl on one and the 5' hydroxyl on another to make RNA. But there's another hydroxyl there. So if you were to do this in a modern laboratory, you'd have to figure out some way to block that hydroxyl. But when you don't block it, look what happens. You get both the 3' 5' polymer and the 2' 5' polymer. And that's when you have really pure monomer that's purified like through an HPLC. And so you have to use these activated systems. So you have to use the activated monomer where you put the activation group on here, and you get 2' and 5' linkages. Well, how much of those do you get? Well, you get a lot. So you get 67% of the 3' 5'. So that means that the other 33% is the 2' 5'. Here, when you use these other oligos, when you use these other monomers, you get a predominance of the 2' 5'. That will be the predominant one. So you get all sorts of messy linkages. Let me show you what that means. Here's how RNA should be. You get this 3' hydroxyl coupling through a phosphate to the 5' position of the next one. 3' to 5', 3' and onward to 5'. That will make you RNA. If you had the homochiral base, the homochiral sugar, which he didn't have, and if you could somehow put those together, then you could polymerize these to 3' 5' to make RNA. But you don't just get this. You get a lot of the 2' 5'. 2' 5'. Lots of it. At least 30%. And then sometimes the predominant is the 2' 5'. Then you don't have RNA. That's what I'm talking about. You've got to protect those other side chains to be able to do this. This was never addressed in that video. Rarely addressed in Origin of Life articles. They'll take this RNA nucleotide and they'll throw it in water and they'll say it polymerizes without ever looking at the 2' hydroxyl attachment. Well, what happens if there are 2' 5' attachments? What would happen? Oh, look at there. Look at there. What's happening? Look what happened. You make siRNA. The 2' 5' linked nucleic acid exhibits very unique hybridization properties to complementary RNA. While the 2' 5' linked nucleic acids form a stable duplex with RNA, they weakly hybridize or not at all to the complementary DNA. Well, that's interesting. The duplex is formed between the 2' 5' linked DNA or RNA and the 3' 5' RNA adopt an A-form helical structure. This suggests that these duplexes may be used as siRNA to inhibit gene expression. They form siRNA. What is that? Small interfering RNA. siRNA degrades messenger RNA after transcription, preventing translation. These are products which shut the biochemical process down. They shut it down. The impurities there shut it down. This is what I'm talking about. You get all these impurities, and they shut down the process. The process is shut down by these impurities. You say, well, you don't even address those. Why didn't you address it in the video? Because I think the people that made that video didn't even know this, because they don't read the primary literature. These are the problems. And are there no alcohols or sugars or amino acids or thiols or amines around during this polymerization? Because they would surely attack those phosphates. In every case, there would be interfering nucleophiles. How is that done on an early Earth? In the laboratory, you can use pristine solvents and get everything HPLC pure and try to pull this thing off. And even with that, you get a lot of 2' 5' linkages. And what you get are only short RNAs to begin with, number one. Number two, if you had any interfering other nucleophiles. And now, later on, when you want to make proteins, you subject it to all the 20 amino acids, all of them. But here, when you just want to make the siRNA, there's no amino acids around. How convenient. Residue order. How do the nucleotides know to hook up in a prescribed order to form the codons for the particular peptides? You need the information coding. That video addressed nothing about where the information coding came from. Nothing. Why? Why not? Because there's no answer to that. That's why. Without that, the story stops dead in its tracks. The RNA prepared on clays are not what the video suggests. Even with extreme human interference, you didn't get what he would want. So the storytelling should again end here. Yet it presses on in the video. It goes on, 3824, then the cited video says,
ribozymes are RNA molecules with catalytic function.
You can tell Dr. Tour in this lecture was just kind of like, can I believe
definitely got stories.
I can't believe there's more to this. You know, like, I can't believe I just debunked all of this stuff and just like pointed out the complete lunacy of, he spent an hour at this point. Well, heck, I'm sure he spent well more than an hour as he was doing the research and writing up what he wanted to say and doing the verifications and everything, and then having his team look at different things and his producers creating the videos, everything, like all the effort that went into this. And he's probably just like, I cannot believe this is happening right now. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's astounding.
I imagine that Dr. Tour is really doing this purely because it's just so absurd. You know, I don't think he's just being hyperbolic because he has religious beliefs or whatever. He's obviously doing it for the reality of the matter, you know?
Well, what's interesting is the some of the evos that are running around in chat and that we've seen in comments and just trying to debunk. Well, like Professor Dave himself, they're making that argument of kind of what you were alluding to there, Jamie, of well, he's a Christian, all that kind of stuff, and it's like, this is like saying that because you go to church, but you are a insert whatever your profession is, if somebody is coming out publicly and claiming that number one, you don't know how to do your own job, which you're well recognized in, number one. And then number two, they're not only are they claiming you don't understand your own job, they're making all of these public assertions that beyond doubt as a professional are either unsubstantiated or outright false. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
At that point, it's either I'm going to go crawl under a rock and act like, I hope he doesn't keep talking trash about me, or come out swinging if you're a freaking alpha and be like, no, boy, get no, little man, yeah, get back. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to my little intro spoof I put together from the beginning of this, but I ended it basically saying, I'm top 50. What are you? It's like, come on, man. And it's just like people in side chat talking about like Dr. Tour's credentials. It's like, well, apparently his peers in like the Royal Society, it was the Royal Society of Chemistry, they made him a fellow last year.
His accomplishment list is just unbelievable, and I'm surprised even Dave would go there, honestly, because it's just out of professional courtesy, he should not even go there with the Christian thing. Dr. Tour is, amazing with his experience and his patents and his credentials and everything.
Well, there's a saying, isn't there, about fools and daring to tread and so forth? Yeah. One of the things that I notice about Dr. Tour is he says over and over again, if I make a mistake, please correct me. Those of you who are working in origins of life chemistry, those of you who are researchers in that area, if I make a mistake, please correct me. He says that over and over and over again. I've heard him say it numerous times. I've watched every single video so far. He wants to learn. He's an inorganic chemist that wants to go from inorganic chemistry to, okay, well then how would we possibly create the building blocks of life just by natural processes? And then once we've got the inorganic chemicals, how do we preserve them and then continue to build them until we have life? And that's the point that he's making. There's absolutely zero evidence that it's possible.
Yeah, he's earned the right to not even give those caveats in his presentation, but shows you what kind of person he is.
Yep.
Yeah. He has the humility and integrity.
All right, so coming up here in just a couple minutes, I was told there's something else we need to be looking out for around the 53-minute mark. So we're at just before 51. So let's keep our eyes peeled.
This means that beyond merely serving as genetic material, they can catalyze chemical reactions, including the production of other molecules, such as proteins. And in fact, our own ribosomes are ribozymes which perform precisely this function. Ribozymes can even perform self-replication. That's right, already at this simple level, we are introducing the possibility of self-replication. In this case, via autocatalysis, thereby introducing the possibility of a form of natural selection, whereby chance alterations in molecular structure that raise the statistical likelihood of the proliferation of the molecule will cause that molecule to propagate with greater frequency.
Well, let's look into that. It was suggested that
ribozymes are RNA molecules with catalytic function.
Yes, they are. But nobody has ever made a ribozyme from a random polymerization of nucleotides on hot clay or any other random polymerization. So nobody has ever made a ribozyme in a prebiotically relevant manner. Nor has anyone ever made the homochiral nucleotides, the building blocks of the RNA, nor the homochiral sugars, the building blocks of the nucleotides, in the prebiotically relevant manner. Why suggest that a prebiotic Earth can do this if it cannot even be done in a modern laboratory using prebiotically relevant routes? Recall the deleterious 2', 5' linkages? What happened to those? And there were no selectors. Fanciful suggestions being made in the video are irrelevant. At 3828, it was said,
this means that beyond merely serving as genetic material, they can catalyze chemical reactions, including the production of other molecules, such as proteins.
there can be no production of proteins without codons, without the information being there. One needs proper codes for protein production, plus an array of supporting enzymes to deliver the amino acids, plus the amino acids in the first place, all in homochiral form. And the presenter has not provided any of this yet. At 3836.
And in fact, our own ribosomes are ribozymes which perform precisely this function.
Yes, because our own ribozymes are of biotic, not prebiotic origin, and they possess the informational code. None of what was suggested has any of these features. None of what was suggested in that video.
That was
Okay.
awesome.
Play the music where you take a break to drink some water. Like, let that sink in for just a moment, folks. Like, let's just hang out for a second. Like, yeah, bro. So I'm gonna very calmly drop this microphone, pick up my water, let you contemplate the fact that I just straight up called you out for being an ignorant idiot, and then we'll get back to it. Let's hear that. Let's hear.
The elevator music.
Perform precisely this function.
Yes, because our own ribozymes are of biotic, not prebiotic origin, and they possess the informational code. None of what was suggested has any of these features. None of what was suggested in that video.
That's brilliant.
3843. It was said,
Awesome.
Ribozymes can even perform self-replication. That's right. Already at this simple level, we are introducing the possibility of self-replication.
you mean self-replication that's never been shown to work even though enormous synthetic expertise has been applied? And RNA, after being primed by biochemists, has never been known to copy more than 7% of itself? That's not self-replication. And the new copy is too short to ever act as a new template for self-replication. There's 2 references in the literature. So how did this happen on an early Earth when biochemists can't even get it to work in a primed RNA that's set up to do this? At 3845,
we are introducing the possibility of self-replication, in this case via autocatalysis, thereby introducing the possibility of a form of natural selection, whereby chance alterations in molecular structure that raise the statistical likelihood of the proliferation of the molecule will cause that molecule to propagate with greater frequency.
have you any example of this outside of a biological system? Any example? No? No references are provided? Not only has it never been demonstrated, but there's no legitimate hypothesis on the table as to how this could have been done. It was just thrown out there. You see the pain that this causes people when they know what's going on and they hear comments like that on a video? Then he goes to the RNA world hypothesis. And he shows each of these subcategories, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and these things.
Now, RNA world is one of Tony's favorite subjects. He actually it's been well documented that Tony's actually a very strong supporter of RNA world hypothesis. And, Tony, are you going to defend your worldview now?
Oh, yeah. What a joke. What a failure.
We'll deal with all of these in the next slide. But here, it was said at 3910.
The widely accepted RNA world hypothesis postulates that RNA molecules performed all manner of catalytic activity, and that proteins only later took over this functionality, which they were able to perform with more versatility. And this was a major step towards the origin of life.
Well, I'll tell you, not everybody agrees with the RNA hypothesis. It is just a hypothesis. For example, here's a recent article by Krishnamurthy, who's a leading researcher in the field of origin of life. And here's what he says in that article, quote, "The view that the deoxynucleosides would have been available alongside the ribonucleosides, though old, is not as widely popular as the RNA world hypothesis. However, it must be pointed out that the RNA-centric view and the RNA-only approach is limited in its validity and has been rightfully questioned critically." So you see that this is not nearly as widely accepted, and it throws out lots of things that have never even been seen. Quote, "RNA forms from inorganic sources," unquote. That has never been shown, not even close, and surely not with homochiral nucleotides. And why doesn't it decompose? Why don't you have to deal with the decomposition problem when you're dealing with RNA? Step 2, quote, RNA self-replicates, unquote. In the best of cases in a modern lab with provided homochiral nucleotides, not more than 7% of a primed RNA has been shown to self-replicate. And that was further too short to act as a replication template itself. If it's a ribosome, there's never been a demonstrated protein-free ribosome. Step 3, quote, RNA catalyzes protein synthesis, unquote. Only if provided the homochiral amino acids with support enzymes. And only if the RNA has been given the information to form a codon pattern with the start and stop data. Step 4, quote, membrane formation changes internal chemistry, allowing new functionality, unquote. A lipid bilayer vesicle can change subsequent protein folding, but there are so many outstanding questions since no phospholipid bilayer has yet been suggested, and the protein folding is a big unknown. We're going to look at the Leventhal paradox in just a moment. Quote, step 5, quote, RNA codes both DNA and proteins, unquote. But where did the RNA get the informational code to begin with? And from where did the homochiral nucleotide arise? You see, every time you skip one of these steps, it just cuts the knees, right? Cuts you right off at the knees. Quote, DNA becomes the master template, unquote. Yes, it is a master template, but in the video's proposal, it is only what the strand of RNA gave it, and nothing more. What's the informational source? Quote, proteins catalyze cellular activity, unquote. This is true, but they require pools of homochiral amino acids and support enzymes to do all of this. From where did those arise? It was suggested that, as it says here, the mineral surfaces could perform organometallic catalysis. And what he shows here is a condensation polymerization taking place in water. Proteins depolymerize in water faster than they polymerize. Then it was suggested at 13 minutes and 29 seconds.
With regards to protein production, if catalysis via ribozymes is deemed insufficient, there are plenty of other possibilities. Hydrothermal vents or volcanic hot springs could have provided the energy required for the polymerization reactions. But my personal favorite explanation involves heterogeneous catalysis over mineral-rich surfaces in tidal pools. The small volume of the pools solves the problem of molecules having to find each other in the ocean, acting essentially like a chemist's flask in a laboratory.
How does one get the chemicals in the oceans needed for the reactions into those small pools? That's not yet been shown. Where'd all these small molecules come from? You said it's no problem, but I don't believe it. You got to show me where they come from. And even if you had them, how do you perform the needed condensation reactions in water? In the water reactions, you would favor the starting material. Amino acids don't even just hook together like that. Even in the chemist's flask in a laboratory, even the chemist can't get them to hook together like that. And how about the side chain protection and deprotection? Side chains are more reactive than the amine itself, than the alpha amine itself. But if you don't want to take my word for it, that the amino acids don't just hook together in aqueous solution, even in a chemist's flask, how about what was published in Nature in 2019 by Matthew Pauner, a key person in origin of life research? And he says this: it is inconceivable that sophisticated and coordinated macromolecules could suddenly emerge at the origin of life, unquote. He goes on to say, quote, peptides are widely assumed to be products of amino acid polymerization reactions. While it's conceptually simple, in practice there are good reasons why these reactions are inefficient in water. And then he goes on to explain why these are zwitterionic, and these don't happen in water. Just hasn't been shown. So how can you keep claiming this? You throw all the organometallic surfaces you want at it. It's not going to happen. So I don't know why that's your favorite place to have it happen when it doesn't happen there. So the video storytelling should end right there. Because if you can't get past this point in origin of life, you can't go on. But it presses on. Then it says in 3958.
But more importantly, the mineral surfaces could have acted as naturally occurring organometallic catalysts. These surfaces may have not only performed efficient syntheses.
Well, maybe Professor Pauner should watch the video to learn that there are organometallic catalysts that can cause efficient synthesis of peptides from amino acids and from amino acids with active side chains. And then maybe he should just retract his article from Nature because it's all wrong based on...
Okay, so everybody, if you didn't pick up on that, Dr. Tours with a straight face just kind of being like, yeah, so Dave, you're not only talking, like, you don't realize this, but you're trash talking me while simultaneously trash talking the person you're referring to. Like, you didn't pick up on the fact that you're actually like dropping double insults while thinking that you're only insulting me. You're actually insulting the I tell you what, this stuff that we like the evotards on YouTube do is really reaching. It's really reaching new levels of just sheer entertainment. Oh man. It's like every time I think there's no way they can top, whatever the last. Oh, every time I think they can't top
Look at that
themselves,
look.
something new comes out.
He's like,
and
bro, are
just,
you serious?
you talking about the look on Dr. Tour's face right now? We're gonna post.
Yeah, you can just like, you can feel it.
You know what would be hilarious is if he was like taking like sunglasses off right there and just like
Yeah, the old like joint and sunglass thing.
yeah, and just been like, really?
And the air horn.
Oh man, this stuff is too good. Anybody else want to add something? We're going. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Some of us are taking gentlemen's bets whether Professor Dave is going to make any retractions. I think he's going to try to save face. This is just going to be a train wreck. I mean, I couldn't live with myself doing that after, especially if you're trying to portray yourself as a teacher. If you say stupid stuff, you make a mistake, you try to clean it up as fast as you can. I mean, I've had math professors make little arithmetic mistakes. And the students will correct them, no problem. Just do that and move on. Professor Dave, on the other hand, he gets called out on this. He's just going to dig in his heels and proclaim he's right. So I'm just saying, I don't think he's going to back down. This will be entertaining.
Well, here's what I'm keeping my fingers crossed on is that. Number one, I agree with you, Sal. I'm actually hoping he doubles down. That would be epic. But then beyond that, what I would really love is if somebody that's an OOL researcher would come out publicly and be like, dude, shut up. Like, you're making the rest of us look bad. Just shut your mouth, okay? Just shut up. Don't talk about this. This is outside of your purview. You don't know what the heck you're talking about. You can't even quote us properly. And then you tried to use my paper to insult Dr. Tour while insulting me. So shut your mouth and get back to, doing your little undergrad stuff. That's fine. But don't come up and play with the big boys unless you want to get, unless you're prepared to be a minnow and get eaten by the sharks, which is what's happening right now. The freaking great white, i.e. Dr. James Tour right now, is chomping on the little minnow that is Wannabe Dave. And man, it's good. Man, I tell you what, I'm gonna have to screenshot this the look on Dr. Tour's face right there. That's gonna be too good. I'm gonna have to add that to the I'm gonna have to add that to the little promo video, just being like Dr. Tour being like, yeah, okay.
And what you were trying to think of before was Thug Life. It came up in the chat. So you should create a Thug Life video of this.
Oh man, it's too good.
It would be freaking awesome.
It would be hilarious. Okay, Jamie, it's on you, man. Jamie, it's on you. You've got to add
the space right here.
you've got to do it and add it to what's the one I've got here that you did with me? Let's see. I think this is we should splice this into you need to cut Dave into this, but
I am the God King, your king. Glory sing.
oh man, that'd be too good.
You got the ones I sent you today, right?
Oh, you sent me more today? I haven't checked my email.
There's one with Dave in it, actually.
Oh, you kidding? Oh man,
yeah. Grab it real quick. It's pretty funny.
Okay, I'll go look. I'll keep playing, and I'll go find that memo. You said email it today.
Yeah.
Okay.
What this video had talked about that we're citing. Yet the video presses on at 40:04.
But given the possibility of the surfaces exhibiting chirality, it could have been the case that they preferentially reacted with one particular enantiomeric version of molecules, like perhaps only L amino acids. This would readily explain their prevalence in proteins, with enzymes arising later to perpetuate the stereochemical bias after their dominance had already been set into place.
This would readily explain their prevalence in proteins, with enzymes arising later to perpetuate the stereochemical bias. Is there any example of a chiral surface showing a high selectivity of one enantiomer for polymerization over others, over a broad class of compounds like that of 19 racemic amino acids? No. Also, does anyone deal with the side chain problem? The amino acid side chains are often more reactive than the alpha-amine and the primary carboxylate. Every statement made in the video is painful when considering the synthetic chemistry involved. Again, I'm not picking on anyone's other videos, but No chemistry, no chemical understanding was in that video that we're referencing. Just utterly ridiculous.
Hey, let me say something.
Come on, tough guy.
We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
Okay. I'm roadkill.
Okay, who was Bart? Was that you trying to say something, or was that Graham? Who was talking?
That was me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a comment here. I had to say this. I had to join and say this. Somebody said that I can't find it. Something about Dave's going to delete his video within a month after the series. Here's the thing on that. He monetizes his channel. His view count since Tor released his series has gone up. So he's making money from this, obviously. But the problem is that it's actually it's really hurting his reputation. So how much is it going to cost him? That's one thing. So if he takes down his video, he loses the revenue, but he loses his reputation at the same time. If he takes down the video, he also loses his reputation because we're all going to call him out on it. So he loses either way, and so he's kind of in a pickle right now. So either way, he's going to lose. And the thing is that if he takes it down, he's going to or if he leaves it up to make money, actually he's going to end up losing money over time because his reputation is going to go down because everybody's going to know it. Long term or short term, he's going to lose money. Takes it down right now, money's gone. Leaves it up, he's going to lose money over time. And also in either case, his reputation is shot because everybody's calling him out on it now. And then if he takes the video down, then everybody's going to call him out on it for taking the video down. So he really shot himself in the foot on this whole thing.
It's a very good point, and it's like I said at the beginning of all this. I think one of the first streams I did on this topic, bro. You went to the street, you talked trash about Michael Jordan, and then he showed up and said, "Let's play." That's where we're at. But the irony is, game one has already happened, and you got owned. He kept talking trash, man, in comments. And then my MJ's laying this guy, obviously. And for the Evos in chat who like have a very hard time like putting 1 + 1 together to reach a conclusion, what I'm actually Dr. Tour and Michael Jordan are being like they're each other, okay? And then the little guy who's come here talking trash, that's Dave, okay? So round one, like you get owned. MJ's dunking on you left and right, and then you like walk off stage or walk off the court and be like, he didn't actually beat me. No, I didn't lose. I didn't lose at all. I mean, that's I totally owned him. Like, no, Michael only thinks he scored. He wasn't actually dunking on me. I mean, it's just like what we're dealing with. It's just and then it's like, hey, you go on ESPN and be like, yeah, I'm talking in this context of like his interview with Aaron Raw and all that kind of stuff. Like, so then you went on ESPN and started talking more trash about how you beat MJ in the street game. And then MJ's like, okay, dude, you know what? Here's what's going to happen. Let's go to the Garden and I'm going to play you live on national TV. How about we do that? And then we'll see how big your proverbial CO Jones are. And then he's still talking trash. It's amazing. Let's keep going.
Before we do, can I just make another comment? You mentioned Michael Jordan. Have you heard of the Professor? He's a one-on-one basketballer.
Oh yeah, on YouTube. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, and a Christian. James Tour is the Professor. Dave is the pretend Professor. Comes on talking trash and then just gets absolutely owned. 11 nip. Nothing. He's got 0. That would make a good meme video.
Have you heard of Charlie Zelenoff? That guy who's like a self-proclaimed undefeated boxer in these
No.
He's just a totally deluded, like young guy that lives in his parents' apartments or whatever, and he thinks he's like this undefeated boxer, world champion. It's crazy. Like he challenged, what's that guy, the heavyweight black guy from America? He's the really tall boxer that knocks everybody out. He got beat by. Anyways, he somehow got into a place where he was at boxing. This kid, and then there's videos of it on YouTube. That would be funny too. But he like gets rocked by. Well, I can't think of his name, but it's just some dumb kid.
It wasn't John Jones, was it?
No, it's the one that got lost his undefeated record. He had like 44 knockouts in 45 fights. He's like 6'7". He's American. He got beat by that white British tall guy. Oh, what is his name? Shoot. He was like the #1 heavyweight for a long time, but anyways, doesn't matter.
All right, let's keep going.
4035 claimed, and then came the claim.
There are other ways to get enantiomeric excess with the amino acids themselves. It has been demonstrated that recrystallization of a mixture of amino acids.
And then he goes on and he talks about that reaction, that supernatant being one enantiomer and that crystal being another. I've already dealt with that. And it was not a slight excess, it was a 700% excess. You call that slight? 700% excess. Not 7%, 700%. To get a homochiral seed and of the homochiral seed. And now what you had to do is you had to, in that homochiral seed of 700%, only 1% of what was in that was what you wanted. And of that, it was only 22% EE. So it's just really, really crazy. Anyway. So concerning homochirality, it was further said at 4108.
So we can see that the chirality of biomolecules may have been implemented at any number of places throughout the process of abiogenesis.
Video has not shown a single viable place where homochirality might have been introduced to amino acids, or how they could have polymerized. So it's not yet proposed a viable enzyme synthesis. And it's not shown where the homochirality in the sugars has arisen, and how they were polymerized with regiochemical and anomeric stereochemical control. Massive control problems in the polymerization of sugars. And you just skip that because you can have trillions and trillions of different isomers hooking together. And it was not shown how nucleic acids with stereochemical control, or how they would polymerize, avoiding the 2,5 linkages. And it has not been shown how they would be stable from rapid degradation through 2' hydroxyl intramolecular attack on the phosphate, nor how the RNA could be stored at minus 80 degrees centigrade or minus 112 degrees Fahrenheit to prevent the rapid decomposition, nor has it been shown lipids with their homochiral control selecting the proper enantiotopic hydroxymethyl. Which we talked about that in the lipid section. You had to select those. Yet, here's the claim of victory over homochirality. When he says, you see, chirality could have been induced at any of these points. How can you claim victory on the homochirality problem when you haven't shown anything? Oh, the nonsensical and unfounded claims. The storytelling should stop right here. But it...
All right, hang on. So in line with Dr. Tour right there. Hang on one sec. Let's visualize, ladies and gentlemen, what is the equivalent of what just happened to Professor Dave. It's too good. It's too good. You can't... So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the equivalent of what just happened to Professor Dave in relation to Dr. Tour. And for the Evos in the chat, the people falling over... No. I was not suggesting that they were Dr. Tour. Oh, man. It's too good.
Yeah, the real professor owned the fake professor.
Man, I love this stuff. All right, let's keep going.
Just in response, was it James? Jamie was trying to ask about the boxer Deontay Wilder.
Yeah, that's the one. You can see Deontay Wilder and look up Charlie Zelenoff. It's really funny. He was like an internet sensation because he was like just this kid that was like totally deluded in his head about his fighting, and he just like made up stuff and was like documenting his day-to-day life. It's just like really funny, kind of sad kind of thing, but like Deontay Wilder literally like hit him once and he like just was like, oh, like he freaked out, and then he tried to pretend like he beat him, and he was telling everybody he beat Deontay Wilder. It's just like weird.
Yep, it came up in the chat.
Okay, so I'm gonna put this on mute because there's a bunch of F-bombs in this video, but let's watch this. This is man, this stuff, it's too good. You can't make these things. I actually pretty ironic. I was actually watching. I saw this. I saw a video of like the best knockouts, and this was one of them. I actually watched a video on this earlier. It's great. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
All right, here we go.
Yeah,
this little side thing he does here in just a second is too funny.
You have to mute Aussie, man. He's quite foul with his language.
He's like, what is he doing?
Here we go. Yeah. Wait for it. Wait for it.
I'm trying to do the no-look kick. You can tell the guy he's fighting is like, what is happening right now? I don't even know what it's...
There we go. That's it. It's over. Enough showboating.
I don't understand why. Well, you know what's ironic about that is that he was being able to get in some pretty good blows at the even with doing that craziness.
Yeah, he was winning.
Yeah, it's like if he hadn't been an idiot, he probably would have won. I mean,
hey, I put in the chat my favorite. It's the knockout of Uzi. Since you showed the MMA stuff, this is.
Where is it? Is it in the side chat?
Yeah, this was the knockout of Uzi. I mean, the way the guy behaves. I mean, he really does a lot of showboating. He had it coming to it. He does remind me of Professor Dave.
Copied it into the private chat.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
This is Usman Ahmed. Is that the guy? Okay.
Please welcome firstly to the ring, Usman Ahmed.
Okay, serious question. Like, did they like lower that guy into his pants or into his shorts?
Flyweight.
So okay, should I go ahead and make a prediction? I'm gonna gamble that the time it takes him to get to the ring is longer than the time he remains in the ring.
Yeah, there you go.
Where's it?
Prince Hassim used to do the same act and dance just like that. He was really good for a long time too. He's a British guy.
Okay, so that security guy walking, you can tell he's just like, what the hell is next to me right now?
He's naturally confident. You have to remember, he's 27. He's not a baby.
Boxers, I'm the referee. I spoke to you both in the dressing room. I obey my command at all times. You both know the rules. Watch the heads, kick the punches up. When I shout break.
Okay, so the fight is starting at 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Alright, so 8 seconds. 8 seconds.
How much did you lay your bet down for? If I can afford it, I'd pay you.
Oh man, he's like out.
Yeah, he's knocked cold.
Tiny ring, man, tiny.
Slightly broke his fall on the way down. I wouldn't like to see his head flashing onto the wall. He wants to get up. That's a good
Oh no,
sign.
he's up.
Probably the fighters find it more embarrassing being
He was
kept
out
on
for a
the
little
floor
bit.
than anything else, but as I said,
Well, you know what happened, right? He expended too much energy dancing, so he wasn't prepared to to bob and weave.
It is like a strategy, though. You cool down your opponent.
behind his eyes, everything looks okay. He wants to sit in the stool. But I mean, his legs will be very unsteady.
He's
so
still
they won't
wobbly.
sit down. You can see that.
Someone's just commented, Tua did that in episode 0.
He stepped right in with a punch. I mean, he was throwing the punches that mattered.
Done. You done, son? Yeah, that is the James Tour to Wannabe Dave, except that Dr. Tour's been landing a punch like that every 3 minutes.
I know.
Like, done.
Someone else just commented, out of the 18 seconds the fight lasted, Uzi was unconscious for 10 of them.
Oh man. Okay, now that we've had our fun at
Hey.
making fun of people, let's,
Yeah.
let's get back
Hey,
to
thanks for showing that. Thank you so much for showing it. I've been wanting to enjoy it with some friends, so thanks.
That was well worth the oh man, that guy was, I mean, he was dancing for a solid 3 minutes probably, or 2.5 minutes, no less than 2 minutes, because it was 2 minutes and 5 into the, I'll say like a minute and a half he was just straight dancing, and then it lasted 8 seconds when the fight started. That's the entertainment of wow. All right.
And there's a claim at 4117.
From here, biopolymers need to assemble into some kind of rudimentary organized structure. This is nowhere near as far-fetched as science deniers make it out to be. First, the system needs a boundary. Luckily, amphiphilic lipids spontaneously form ordered structures.
And then 4144, quote,
although in prebiotic absence of phospholipids, the first membranes can have been bilayers or even monolayers of fatty acids or other simple lipids that can easily have arisen spontaneously.
easily, spontaneously. Fatty acids do not arise spontaneously. Fischer-Tropsch type syntheses and hydrothermal vents and glycoaldehyde proposed prebiotic routes have never been confirmed to show formation of fatty acids in any prebiotic sense. All that's known today is that fatty acids are products of biological processes. Again, this word spontaneously here is a code word for we have no idea. So every time they throw out the word spontaneously means, how did a fatty acid form spontaneously? Show me how that happened from methane. I would love to see that. Oh, you haven't an answer? Okay. And I'm the science denier? No, I'm not denying science. I'm using and supporting science. I'm denying nonsensical claims. You see the trick here? One just says it's easy and it's spontaneous. And then they quickly press on to the next chapter in the storytelling. Every one of these is a hard problem with no demonstrated prebiotically relevant solution. In a modern lab, outside a biological system, let alone under a rock someplace. None of this has been solved. And even if the fatty acid could somehow form, would it be sufficient to form a lipid bilayer? No. Neil Devaraj writes in Nature Chemistry in November 2020, he wrote, quote, all living organisms harness proton gradients across phospholipid membranes to generate energy. Vesicles formed from simpler amphiphiles, such as fatty acids, are unable to maintain proton gradients, suggesting that diacyl phospholipid membranes appeared early in the origin of life. You can't do it with just fatty acids. That video that we're citing was wrong again. So there's no phospholipid bilayer because there are no fatty acids. Now what? Stuck again. The storytelling should end right here. But it doesn't.
All right, so everyone wants to weigh in on stuff that Dr. Tour was just talking about. But what really stuck out to me was the point he's making about, oh, well, these must have occurred. The author, the other paper he was quoting, these must have occurred very early in the process. And it's like, yeah, so congratulations on the realization that yet another one of the fundamentals must have somehow occurred in the early stages. It's like, I hear that, it seems like we hear that ad nauseum. I'm just like, oh, well, we recognize that this must have somehow just come into existence very early in the stage for things to be viable. But there was something simpler beforehand, you know?
They have to believe that. That's their only option. It has to have happened because we're here. And we cannot accept the idea of God because that's not science, in inverted commas, because science has been redefined to be naturalism.
Yeah. I actually didn't know that it was that hard to synthesize fatty acids. The Origin of Life community has done so much hyping and sweeping things under the rug. I didn't know that, and I've tracked Origin of Life for 20 years. I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah, it's getting pretty crazy. So Bart just sent me a link. Can I share that? Is that something we can share, Bart? Or is it stay in private? Just let me know. All right, anybody else have anything they want to add before we keep going? Yes. Okay, I guess everybody's on mute. All right, keep going.
Doesn't. Some further say 42.06.
So we can begin to imagine bilayers forming around a collection of biomolecules, including RNA and proteins.
No, I can't imagine that. Can't imagine that. I don't know where you got the nucleotide. I don't know where you got the sugar for the nucleotide. I don't know how it polymerized. I don't know where you got the homochiral amino acids. And even if you had those, I don't know how they polymerized. So I can't imagine that. And Morris said at 4210.
This allowed for the emergence of hypercycles, which are organizations of self-replicating macromolecules connected in a cyclic manner, where each catalyzes the synthesis of its successor in addition to itself, with the last one looping back to the first. This is not strictly hypothetical.
Do they mean strictly hypothetical like everything else they've shown? 4214.
The emergence of a cooperative network of self-assembling ribozymes was demonstrated in 2012.
No. Without a purification mechanism in place, this would rapidly make vast arrays of impurities that would also start replicating. This cannot work. I wish the reference were provided to the claimed article so we could see what's going on there. And how about, as for your hypercycles, look what Leslie Orgel wrote. He is one of the biggest names in origin of life research in the 20th century. He's no longer alive, but he wrote this article for the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science in the year 2000. Quote, non-covalent interactions between small molecules in aqueous solution are generally too weak to permit large and regiospecific catalytic accelerations. To postulate one fortuitously catalyzed reaction, perhaps catalyzed by a metal ion, might be reasonable. But to postulate a suite of them is to appeal to magic. That's an origin of life researcher saying you appeal to magic. And it was finally said at 4245.
From here, it's not that large a leap in complexity to get to some kind of protobiont or protocell, where some rudimentary metabolism is taking place, and other more primitive versions of cellular functions begin to emerge. So-called G1U protocells with basic metabolic capabilities have been synthesized in labs as early as the 1960s. All that is left to get to early prokaryotic life is natural selection and time.
It's interesting that the cited video relates back to G1U protocells of 1963. thereby underscoring my point that little progress has been made for 60 plus years. That video itself goes back to 1963. But more to the point, no, there...
You can tell that Dr. Tour was having to choke down a chuckle right there. Of just, I can't believe I'm having to try and keep a straight face at how stupid this stuff is.
And notice as well how Dave is just so completely ignorant and keeps appealing to, oh, it's easy, it's easy, it's easy, it's easy, it's easy. And it's not easy. The origin of life researchers know it's not easy. All the effort they have to put in. James Tour is just coming across this and looking at it and going, are you kidding? This is nowhere near easy. How ignorant do you have to be? You're either ignorant or you're being deliberately deceptive.
have never been metabolisms demonstrated. Just any old chemical reaction is non-metabolism. What is a metabolism? Here's Britannica Encyclopedia definition. Quote, metabolism is the sum of the chemical reactions that take place within a cell of a living organism and that provide energy for vital processes and for synthesizing new organic materials. Living organisms are unique in that they can extract energy from their environment and use it to carry out activities such as movement, growth, and development and reproduction. But how do living organisms or their cells extract energy from their environments? And how do cells use this energy to synthesize and assemble the components from which the cells are made? The answers to these questions lie in the enzyme-mediated chemical reactions that take place in living matter. Metabolism. I didn't write that. That's still quoting. Hundreds of coordinated multi-step reactions fueled by energy obtained from nutrients and or solar energy ultimately convert readily available materials into the molecules required for growth and maintenance, unquote. Never has metabolism been demonstrated in a protocell. That video that we're citing was wrong again. Hence, this cell assembly story is stopped dead in its tracks. It should stop right here. Well, that wraps up part 1 on constructing a cell, the assembly problem. Tune in to part 2 and we'll pick up where we left off. We remain clueless on life's origin. Thanks for joining us. If you want to subscribe, just click.
Mic drops everywhere.
I may have to play that one.
Nice. Somebody just said that to you?
Yeah. Somebody said that too. I think that's hilarious. That would be an epic if you like at some point if we were like edited like some of his one-liners into that as they're like popping.
I'm down, dude.
Get like 3 or 4 of his like best one-liners, and then just like, and then at the end, just boom, be too good. Oh man!
Send it to him and see if he'll play it. He might add it to his next video.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a deep fake with Tour on it for sure now, and I'll do a really good edit.
Oh man, I was rushing to because I kind of decided to do the stream like about an hour and a half before doing it, and so I was rushing to put that like intro together. I didn't get the timing quite right, but I was like, man, I'm gonna play it again. If you pay attention, like I've got this scene where I found a picture of Dr. Tour, like he's looking like a boss, and like the lighting and everything at the very end. It's too good. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Logical Plausible Probable. I'm your host, John Maddox, and tonight we're going to be reviewing the one, the only, Dr. James Tour and his response to Wannabe Dave, that guy who said he didn't know what he was talking about in Abiochem, to which the good doctor responds, boys, I'm top 50. You ain't even finished those attempts at organic chem.
That was awesome. I missed that. That was cool. Thanks for showing it.
Yeah, that... I was trying to the template I was using. I was trying to slow it down a little bit, but it wasn't responding the way I wanted to because I wanted to get that scene where like Dr. Tour is sitting on the giant couch. It was like from a photo shoot, I guess, and from an interview he did. And I'm like, man, he's looking like the straight up like the boss. I wanted to slow it down. Like right there, he's like, "I'm top 50." Because it would have been so epic. Because the right before that, I've got Wannabe Dave like sitting on a picture of him. I don't know why he would publish that, but like holding a liquor drink, sitting by the pool. It's like,
Yeah,
so
that-
you
that
got
photo-
Wannabe Dave at the pool, and then you got the boss over here.
Yeah, that photo of Dr. Tours from One for Israel, the interview he did with them.
Yeah.
It's his testimony.
Oh, it's too good, man. This stuff is you can't. When I know I keep talking about this, but you can't make this stuff up. Like it just gets better and better by the day. Go ahead, Sal.
I just wanted to say I remember your debate with Erica on abiogenesis, and then some of the after shows. I was thinking, we do a replay of if these debates were ever rerun, we have all the material to prosecute the case, and some of the stuff she cited in her debates with you were they're the very similar talking points to Professor Dave that got crushed here, and it's not her expertise, and I respect that, but I just wanted to say that's I think that settles some of the debates that have where Erica's defended abiogenesis, that's been totally discredited in this series.
Well, the thing that I find extraordinarily fascinating about all this, and with Dr. Tour, with Dr. Stadler, with Fazrana, with, a plethora of people who've written books on this. There's papers, there's articles, all these different things. The loudest Evo atheists, as I like to call them, running around claiming that we're the ones that are ignorant. And in no way, and they talk about credentials, and you don't have this piece of paper, you don't have X, Y, and Z. And it's like, look, I am not making the claim that I am the expert. However, the evidence only continues to support the positions that we're taking and to further provide proof, or proof in the evidentiary sense, only continues to show that and support the position. It's not making me I'm not having to retreat from the positions. I'm being able to become more aggressive. And I'm using myself, just speaking rhetorically. We all can. While we're simultaneously being told that we're the ones who are believing in God of the gaps, etc., etc. And it's like, you don't even know, per your own admission, you have, most of them, per your own admission, you haven't even gone and researched this for yourself, while claiming that I don't know what I'm talking about. And then somebody, experts do come out and they're like, well, yeah, we do have that problem. Oh, well, that is true too. Well, yeah, we haven't solved that either. And it's like, well, we've been being told that that's solved by all these loudmouth people running around claiming that we don't know what we're talking about. So which one of us? So are you like me? If you agree that we haven't solved X, then why are people who supposedly support you claiming that we have? Where is it?
Yep. And flip it over. What qualifications does Professor Dave have? He's not a professor. He doesn't have the qualifications to make the claims that he's making, but they'll believe him because he says what they want to hear.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I don't have any, well, of course I don't run around calling myself a professor, but at the same time, it's like, I don't necessarily think you have to have the, quote unquote credentials to be able to make a point and to make a correct assertion. But at the same time, have something to back up your claim. And
well, it's the argument from authority fallacy. Oh, no, you don't have this qualification, so therefore I can't listen to you. Yeah. No, the information either stands or falls on its own. If you can present the information and it's true, it doesn't matter what qualifications you have. That's an ad hominem attack.
But what has been heartening is that there's been a change in kind of the upper tiers of academia. People like James Tour, a lot of people don't know the name in the United States, Marcos Eberlin, who had 200 PhD chemistry students. 200 PhD chemistry students. Eberlin has rubbed shoulders with Nobel Prize winners. He's very well recognized, like Dr. Tour. And so we have Dr. Tour, we have Marcos Eberlin, we have a Nobel Prize winner in Richard Smalley, who Tour worked for, and Tour is actually instrumental in Smalley's conversion. We have scholars like Rob Stadler, very senior scientist, Change Loratan, Harvard postdoc, Ivy League, and then just more and more of these chemists. That's what is heartening, is that the right people in very high levels are just finally just fed up putting up with what they're seeing is just not right. It's not a matter of promoting ID. It's just that they're seeing garbage science getting through peer review. And an example of that was Jack Shostak's paper. Oh my goodness. That was so bad. He didn't even get his chemical diagrams right, and it passed peer review. That's an indictment of the process. It's like, oh, if you have a anti-ID paper, I mean, it may not be overtly anti-ID, we'll give you a free pass.
Yep. So it's also the genetic fallacy that they're committing by saying, oh, you don't have a degree. But there's someone else made a comment here. So that comes from the chat. There's someone else made a comment here in the chat. Oh, that's right. He looks like the Godfather. Dr. Tour looks like the Godfather sitting in that chair, that photo that you mentioned earlier, James. So maybe you can mention to Jamie. That'd be a good meme to make as well. Godfather of chemistry. Welcome to my world, Professor Dave. You come here, you disrespect the science.
That would be pretty entertaining. Hang on, let's see here.
Another good comment. Dave makes me think of professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. That's the only way in which he's a professor.
Well, here's
self-proclaimed.
Here's the imagery that I used in the first. Oh man, you can't make this up. Oh, it's too good.
He looks like a wannabe mafia guy. There's the boss.
No.
There's the boss.
No. Professor Dave. He is the son, right?
Oh, that's it.
He's the
delinquent son.
Right.
That's him.
And then
who was it? Oh no, was it Andrew
boss.
Cuomo? The guy on CNN. Which Cuomo's? What did he get called? Fredo.
That's Chris Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo. Fredo.
Well, the funniest thing is that
Professor Fredo.
He ran around trying to claim that that being called that was somehow racist, and he tried to play the whole race card, and then everybody was just kind of like, "Yeah, dude,
that's not the point.
That's just an insult. You're just
got nothing to do with it.
You're just that guy. Okay, calm down. Like stop acting like you're big time. Like you're not, and you're the little brother of the governor. Okay, and your daddy, your grandfather was his father. It's like your father was a governor, your brother's a governor. You're running around on CNN. What's up, man? I'd say speaking of him, there's some hilarious videos of that guy being a complete prick.
Yeah.
In like bars and stuff, and like threatening to beat people up and all that stuff. But the best one was when he, on his radio show and on CNN, went on this whole tangent about the biker that threatened him. And then the guy comes, like, the guy that threatened him comes on, does an interview over, I think it was with, I want to say he went on with Sean Hannity first, and then he did Tucker Carlson. The dude is like in his late 60s, and he was riding his bicycle. Okay, he's like this old. He's like an artist or something, like some old, like little man, right? And guess what he was like? And guess what he was, threatening and all that stuff. He was asking Cuomo why he didn't have a mask on while he was supposed to be in quarantine.
Yeah.
Because so Cuomo had been coming on, doing his live stream and stuff like, oh man, I got the virus, and he's like, it's just so crazy. He's like talking about how he's just dying, And then, like, literally, like 2 days later, the guy is like, who lives in the same neighborhood as Cuomo, is like out riding his bike, and he sees Cuomo outside while he's
Without a
like
mask.
2 days before he's talking about how he's dying, the virus, right?
Yeah.
No mask on, or whatever. And then Cuomo comes over and like threatens to beat his ass if he doesnn't go away. And then goes on the radio and talks about the thick-wheeled biker was threatening me and like all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the old man comes on, he's like, I wasn't threatening him. I'm in my 60s. Cuomo's 6'5". Like, who was I threatening? Like,
well, you got to spin it somehow. That's how he does his journalism, if you can call it that.
Oh man, it's like, man, you can't make this crap up these days. It's just we're reaching levels of just straight up. Well, as we go back to it, man, we've got on one side, and
from Ray Giordano, you got to read this chat. There's plenty of epithets for Italians. Fredo isn't one of them, and I'm pretty sure I've been called all of them. It was a desperate reach by Chris.
Well,
sorry.
I don't with that last name, I don't know if he qualifies to be able to speak for Italians. I think maybe you're falsely identifying as an Italian, all Alec Baldwin's wife claiming to be Spanish when she's actually white, who was born in Boston. But she adopted.
Who's this Cuomo?
Oh yeah, have you seen the stuff with Alec Baldwin and his wife?
Yeah.
What's her name? The blonde? Her?
She's been running around claiming to be Spanish. She was born in Boston to America. She's white, like she's straight up white, and she's been running around speaking. She adopted an accent.
Right? Not Kim Basinger.
No. His latest one. They've named all their kids like Spanish names. She's not Spanish. She doesn't even have Spanish heritage. She like started speaking like she had an accent. She didn't have an accent, and then they've been running around claiming like people are racist and all this other kind of stuff. And it's like, so you're impersonating somebody.
Social, what do they call that? Cultural appropriation and
Yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between like liking, the clothing style or the food or whatever, and then faking an accent.
Yeah, that's retarded.
And claiming that's your heritage.
I think
you're from Boston.
Cultural appropriation is not a thing.
Well, I remember that poor girl to her prom. She wore a Chinese dress, and they she went viral because she looked adorable in the dress, and then somebody went off and like claimed cultural appropriation, like accused her of cultural appropriation, and then she just got absolutely assassinated on social media for doing that stuff. And it's like, people have been wearing other countries' design, like
usually bought from
clothing
people of that country.
It's usually it's an illusion of respect usually. Like, I like this. Oh, I love this design, especially like girls when they're dressing up and stuff for like events. Like, that's a
geisha dress is very attractive.
Yeah, like that's not an insult. That's an illusion of recognition and appreciation for the design, not the other way around.
That's what I was against. There's certain things you could do that could be maybe called a cultural appropriation. I retract what I said, but for the most part, what people are complaining about lately is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, if you're going to go down that road, then no non-European should wear a suit.
That's true.
Yep. Can't wear a sombrero, even though the Mexican guy sold it to you, but whatever.
But let's go.
Hang on, though. They should be allowed to wear. Should kilts be limited only to men undergoing transition? Or is that appropriate to be have like cross-sex acquisition of the traditional male skirt?
Well, transgenderism meets cultural appropriation. It's like, what about appropriation of the sexes?
Yeah, that's when it becomes obviously ridiculous. They're so inconsistent.
It's ridiculous because sexism was the thing. Then it's cultural appropriation now with transgenderism. They butt heads, really.
Yep.
Yeah,
I saw a meme that pointed out all of the contradictions in everything that's going on at the moment in relation to you can't determine the sex of someone when they're born. They get to determine their sex, but you can't and it just goes through all of the things. Like, you can't like this cultural appropriation. You can't borrow from. And I can't remember everything, but it just pointed it out beautifully. I wish I remembered it better than I hoped I would be when I started speaking.
Well, the irony is that while everything's supposed to be human rights, right? We're all supposed to be, they're shooting for one world government and we're all one, all this other kind of stuff, while simultaneously telling us that we're all opposite. And not only opposite.
That's how they achieve it. Division.
Well, absolutely.
Divide and divide and divide.
Well, I mean, that's the obvious. It's the obvious objective, right? Like that's what they're trying to do. But I mean, it's just the hypocrisy and the level of brainwashed states of individuals that are being successfully accomplished through quote unquote education and media propaganda and such. It's like, I mean, the thing that gets me is I'm in my mid-30s and I'm old enough to have paid attention to there's been dramatic cultural shift in my lifetime. I mean, there's been a dramatic, at least for me, in the last 15 years. Since I came back to the States, so I grew up in England. Since I moved back to the United States in 2002 till now, I have watched, not complete, but a very dramatic paradigm shift in the United States culture, for example.
Did you say 02? You moved back? Were you born here and then you moved to Britain? Is that what you said?
No, I was born in England.
Oh, so you came here in 02. So you're saying?
So I'm American. My father got a job with the Air Force. He's retired military, but they were living in San Antonio. He got a job he had to report to in the UK, July 29th, and they hopped on a plane, flew over. My mom was pregnant with me, and I was popped out 10 days later.
So an anchor baby then. Or a pseudo anchor baby.
well, no, so here's the thing, and here's a sidebar, but one of the things that really pisses me off about the ongoing discussion about this stuff here in the United States is that 88% of the countries on this planet have just soli and just sanguinis law. And so just soli is right of the soil, just sanguinis is right of blood, right, in terms of citizenship and all that stuff. Every country in the first world, except for the United States and Canada, and actually Canada is starting to initiate some more restrictive rules, have definitive just soli laws. So, like, you can't just come over and pop out a kid and they magically get citizenship. Now, if I'd been born a year prior, I would have gotten dual citizenship because I was born on English soil. However, the UK at the time was suffering from massive issues of people trying to escape the Soviet Union and using that tactic to gain refugee status and all that kind of stuff, right? So they actually passed their version of the just soli law, which I think the original iteration has changed a few times. The original iteration was at least one parent must be a citizen of the Commonwealth. So you could even get away with it if you were like one parent was from Canada or Australia or whatever, right? But since both my parents were American citizens, I only got American citizenship. Tragic for me, right? But when I moved back to the States and I started hearing all this stuff about the citizenship stuff and whatnot, I'm like, this is not exactly some kind of outlier concept. This has been being addressed around the planet. We're actually the outlier on not having this kind of thing accounted for.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like all we have to do is pass a law, here's the other thing. So under the 14th Amendment, what the idiots always try to rely upon, to like, we'd have to have a constitutional amendment to modify this. No. The final clause of the 14th Amendment gives Congress the power to interpret and enforce the provisions provided before. And people talk about there's no precedent, which is also categorical BS. So most people don't know is from the Articles of Confederation until 1926, Native Americans did not have the right to vote. Until 1926, when Congress, under the power granted by the final clause of the 14th Amendment, passed a law which granted some, but not all, of the Native Americans right to vote. It wasn't until, I think it was either 1946 or 1948, an additional law was passed which granted right to vote to all Native Americans. So it's like, you're telling me that you don't have the power to under the 14th Amendment to just be like, hey, at least one parent must be a citizen of the United States in order to get citizenship status. Or you could initiate something like the Germans do, which they have a similar iteration, and then or the parents must be legal residents. I think it's of 7 years. In order for their child to be given citizenship, if neither parent is a citizen, stuff like that.
Did you minor in history, dude?
Did I minor in history? No, I love history. I actually thought about majoring in history, but then I was like, man, I can never do anything with it. But I just random stuff I like to research. But yeah, these kind of things, man. It's like this is how it is on the majority of the planet, and this is what really pissed me off in the whole all this political BS and like the. If you're against, birthright citizenship and stuff, you're racist, xenophobic, bigoted, etc. And I'm like, well, cool. By that logic, you freaking morons, you're literally calling the majority of the planet all those insults.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who is it? Who isn't what you're calling, me for saying, hey, we should have some kind of a just solely law. It's not exactly a. But they're
that's
gambling.
Racist. Everybody out there is racist in all the countries.
Yeah, it's like they're gambling on the most basic stuff. But anyway, I've been rambling about politics. Bart, just join us again, man. You got anything you wanted to interject on all this stuff? Get back on topic, I guess. No, Bart says no. Okay. Well, we can get back into conversation then. Anybody? I know I've been running my mouth here for like 5 minutes. Anybody want to interject?
Well, I was going to say what you were talking about just then reminds me of when Trump told Cruz that he might not be an American when they were running before 2016 or in 2016.
Yeah.
Are you natural born? Well, yeah, of course he is.
Well, I used to joke about that in context of myself, that if I ever ran for president and somebody tried to pull that on me, I'd be like, well, I was conceived in San Antonio and popped out in England, so what's your point?
Yeah, and both your parents are American.
Yeah.
Well, if you want proof of a cultural shift like you were talking about, just consider Mrs. Doubtfire as a movie.
Yeah.
They won't play that on TV no more.
Really? That's been banned?
Yeah, that's what I've heard anyway.
Wow.
Like, people don't want to see that, or they don't. It's not funny, kind of thing.
Well, it would be seen to be mocking transgender, or not transgender, but cross-dressing at least.
Yeah.
But that's the same ballpark.
Well, all I gotta say is at this point, when Friends has now been, the woke cancel culture is going after Friends.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, I don't even know what to say at this point. If that
it's moving fast.
I should have said they won't make Mrs. Doubtfire a movie like that anymore. That's what I should have said.
That's true. Well, they're trying to ban Seinfeld.
Yep.
I mean, when Seinfeld and Friends are being classified as racist.
Oh, because of Kramer.
Yeah, I'm like, well, no, not just because of what he said in that stand-up comedy set, but no, like the show itself. Like, there's been all these like petitions to ban like the whole show, but like specific episodes, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you want to ban Seinfeld? It's the show. It's literally the show about nothing.
Comedy often appeals to or uses the idea of stereotypes, and you're chucking off at a stereotype, and then these snowflakes, they can't handle. Oh, you've stereotyped someone. That's bigoted. It's it's racist, or it's sexist, or it's whatever. But it
really
just,
is a bad sign.
It blows my mind.
The question is, how far will it swing right now after this presidency? I wonder.
Yeah, well, I hope it does. I hope the Senate at least goes back to being more conservative after the midterms. And I'm saying this as an Australian who lives in Australia and has always lived in Australia. But if American politics doesn't get it right, our world's gone. Australia will get taken over by China or someone. So it matters to me.
Yeah, you're the fourth or fifth Australian I've talked to who's said exactly that. Like, everybody is. I think all of Southeast Asia and that area is kind of all freaking out a little bit
about China.
Well, here's the thing. Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's what people say. Like, people talk about America being all this such a bad country, and not that there's bad things don't happen and through the government and stuff, but overall, like, America's probably the most, power for good that there's ever been, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. And what's the alternative? China, Russia, even the EU? No, they're not better. What other country on earth would be the better country to be the world policeman, in inverted commas, and to try and keep some sort of peace and stability in the world? And I know America's not perfect; they're constantly doing things, but who would do it better? And if you don't have that world policeman, then you just have chaos and anarchy, and someone else will rise up who's worse.
Yeah. Well, and here's the major problem I think the world faces right now is, let's all just be honest, the EU is incompetent. They can't do it. They don't have they literally do not have the forces. So case in point, and my numbers will be slightly off because this was several years ago when I researched this, but at the time, if you combined the militaries of every member of the EU, they would have had less than 1 million total soldiers.
Yep.
And that was every country combined. And I'm like, and we wonder why the EU is all bark and no bite, and why they keep caving to all this kind of stuff. It's because they know if they piss off the wrong person or group, whether it be terrorist or a nation, they literally can't defend themselves. They got nothing. I mean, case in point, right now, what's happening with Greece. The Greeks are actually like dramatic. They started conscripting soldiers, like, because they have all the problems they're having with Turkey. And there was an epic video. Okay, so as a sidebar, are you any all aware of the literal extortion that Turkey is doing on the EU right now?
No.
Okay. So, all those refugees that the Turks, like the EU has been paying Turkey to like keep in their country rather than send them on and to allow them to pass through into Europe, right? So they've been paying the Turks billions to like keep all these refugees from the rest of the Middle East, like, don't let them in. Well, the Turkish dictator literally, not figuratively, literally came out and was like, yeah, so we're going to need a couple more billion, or we're going to just let people through. We're going to stop keeping people in these refugee camps, just let them go. Well, the Merkel and the rest of the EU, like, oh, he's bluffing. You know what he did? Literally, not figuratively, literally put a couple 100,000 of them in trucks and buses, okay? Drove them to the Greek border, unloaded them, and just sent them on their way. Well, what did the Greeks do? The Greeks responded with, they got cranes, and the biggest wall you have ever seen was getting built, like, with under armed guards. So there's like Greek soldiers everywhere creating a line, and they're taking like 20-foot by 20-foot blocks of concrete and stacking them as fast as possible to like block. And then you can see in the videos that you can see on the other side of the border, there's all these Turkish military vehicles and just ridiculous numbers of people standing right there. Well, guess what happened? The EU folded, and they ponied up a couple more $1 billion to Turkey. And what happened? They loaded them all back on the trucks, took them back to the refugee camp. It's like,
if the EU was smart, what they would do is put that money into building an army that stops those people coming across. But they're not smart. See, this is why Trump demanded that the EU start paying for the US protecting them and all of the military bases and everything that are in the EU.
Well, and the irony is that the EU's been like, different members of the EU have been insisting that the United States close their bases, stop having bases, and it's like, I mean, I grew up on the third Air Force headquarters, right, and down in the middle of nowhere by Cambridge in the Fens, and two gigantic bases were there, and then there was like a spy base that was a couple miles away, but the
you know the Bentwater story, right?
Huh?
That Bentwater story about the UFO. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
It's in. You've heard of Bentwaters, right? I think it's called. Yeah, there was like a colonel there. They like. Just check it out.
I'll check that out. But yeah, I remember like for years there were always all these protests to like shut down the bases and all this that kind of stuff. Anyway, my father worked there for 24 years, and like I said, I spent 0 to 18 there. But it was a couple years ago they finally closed down one of the bases. Well, actually, they closed down two of them now. And I'm like, so you have shut down most of the bases in Germany, and a lot of the other ones already been closed, like in France and everything. There were hardly any left there. You closed down one of the ones in Italy, and now you're closing down the 3rd Air Force headquarters in England. And while simultaneously the threats to the EU are growing. How does this make any sense? Like, you're actively kicking out or not making it attractive for the U.S. military to stay, but not do anything to protect yourself. Like, what fantasy land do these people live in is what I want to know.
Joe Wilson saying in the comments that Greece is building a wall. Oh no,
yeah.
that was Andrew Graham said that.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Like, they were.
Yeah.
I watched the video of them. I mean, those are 20-foot by 20-foot blocks of concrete they were stacking.
Yeah.
I mean, those things were freaking huge.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, this wall is not going to stop anybody. I mean, it always amazes me. People forget, like, yeah, once you get to like a 40-foot wall, that's a serious undertaking. If you don't, I mean, if it's a solid slab of concrete, like,
you're really trying to stop people.
They're just gonna climb it. It's like, well, they can, but a whole bunch of people aren't gonna climb it. Like, you don't.
I wonder if they've called Trump and asked him for advice.
Man, I tell you what, I cannot believe that Andrew Cuomo, Biden ordered, like, the first day in office. He literally had just like sworn his oath, and then his first executive order was to shut down construction. I mean, emergency.
Well, I've seen a
halts.
picture of all these illegal immigrants headed towards the border with Biden T-shirts on. Fresh, brand new Biden T-shirts.
I saw that. It's epic, man. We have so much madness that's happening. What's getting me? And he shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, and now Whitmire in Michigan is threatening to shut down the. I think it's the either channel 4 or channel 5 that come from Canada. And it provides like 75% of the fuel for Quebec and Ontario. And she's talking about shutting it down. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. That's not.
Oxygen use up or make more emissions that way.
You had some interference. Say that again.
If they shut down that pipeline, it's just for show, because then they'll ship it on trucks and it'll make more emissions.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I think they'd probably do most of it on barges or trains, but and then obviously trucks once they get across the other side. But yeah, I mean, it's like, why are we doing that? To an ally, that's just dumb. And it's kind of like what I find it very fascinating how people don't want to recognize that Putin has got Germany specifically by the short and curlies in relation to natural gas. And because, I mean, Russia's basically got the only major pipeline into the continent. It was a couple of years ago, like I think this was 2015, the EU formally petitioned the Obama administration and the United States Congress to expedite the authorization of export licenses for United States companies so that they would no longer have to be dependent upon Russia for natural gas. And of course, Obama, and they refused. But and then like the next year, or maybe it was a year and a half after that, guess what Putin did in December? He shut down the pipeline and forced the EU to make concessions. And like relieve sanctions. It's like, hey, Germany, how y'all doing? Negative 10 degrees outside. Awesome. So yeah, you got no natural gas to stay warm. Let's get back to the negotiation table and see if we can come to an agreement. What do you say? Like, oh man, and then it's like right at the same time, everybody's like, why would Putin want to annex Crimea? Like, that just makes no sense, sort of stuff. And it's like, you freaking idiots. Why would he want Crimea? Let's see. Right now, prior to the re-annexation of Crimea, the only exit portal that Russia had was up through Scandinavia, and there's a very narrow choke point in between Denmark and is it Norway that all of his ships had to go through. Why did he want Crimea again? Oh wait, it gave them another exit portal and potential access to a pipeline. Like, hello, this is not exactly some complicated strategic move that's being made here. You're granting Putin greater level of control and authority and power in general. And then everybody's going to run around being like, oh, there's nothing to see here. It's totally normal. Like, no, it's not. Ugh.
Germany have also shot themselves in the foot because they rely a lot on green energy. They're really struggling. Whereas France have stayed with like nuclear energy and stuff like that. Germany have gone super green. So they need that extra. Like they don't have the coal, they don't not using the oil, they don't have the nuclear. So they need that extra backup. So I don't know whether it's being done deliberately by the people that control or whether Merkel's just an idiot and the Germans are asleep. I don't know. It's hard to know what goes on in people's minds.
Yeah. George Bond, welcome to the stream. How are you? How is everything down in good old Aussie land?
Fantastic. Is there an echo?
I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm getting it too. I don't think we can do anything.
Right. I've only got about 15, 20 minutes before I take my dog for a walk. I was going to say hello to that other Aussie in the stream there. How are you, Graham? Good day.
G'day, George. Good to finally meet you.
Likewise.
Sort of.
Yeah. John, that intro is super, mate. That's fantastic intro.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I had some good fun trying to put that together.
Good. Is it just me, or does it seem like the Democrats, or I call them Democrats, are out to destroy America, their own country?
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's always been the plan.
Well, it's not here's the thing. It's no longer conspiracy. It's publicly stated that they want to fundamentally transform America, and they're doing it. They're not even hiding anymore. I mean, like the bill they just passed. Was it either this morning or yesterday? I forget now. My days are blurring. But with the voter, like basically, long story short, they're making massive power grabs with the obvious objective, which is to remove barriers to their ongoing maintaining power. I mean, they put provisions in there that not indirectly, not quasi, or could be interpreted to, that directly contradict the Constitution of the United States. I mean, directly contradict it. And I mean, they've already had, I think, 20 attorneys general of 20 different states have already issued formal statements to Congress that A, if it gets signed into law, they will formally challenge it, and B, they have zero intention of enforcing it because of its unconstitutional aspect.
This is what gets me, though, John. Don't they actually take an oath to protect the Constitution? Yet, in everything that I've seen, they're actually trying to destroy the Constitution. Aren't they going against what they've actually pledged not to do?
No, absolutely. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, it's direct. Yeah. I mean, these people have zero intention to, like, the oath means nothing to them. It's a facade. I mean,
at least we got the Supreme Court.
No, we don't. You kidding me?
Yeah, sort of.
The Supreme Court's compromised.
Well, I mean, if we didn't get what we did get, think about it then.
Well,
yeah,
true.
It could be way worse. I think is Jamie's point.
Well, potentially, but here's the thing. They both Kavanaugh and what's her face? I forget the woman's name.
Amy Coney Barrett.
There we go. And Gorsuch have all compromised on the most specifically important rulings of their life.
Yep.
They have already. I mean, I don't know if you guys read the scathing dissent by Clarence Thomas.
I didn't read it, but I was aware. I saw a little bit.
Holy crap! I mean, he was straight up eviscerating his like his fellow justices, of just like
him and
what did it-
Alito were the only two dissenters.
Alito had a scathing one as well, but it's basically they're basically like, why are we even here? Like, what's the point of the court if we're going to refuse to like when they refuse to hear the merits of the state versus state lawsuits, and they refuse to even hear the case. I mean, it's like that's the whole point. That's one of the fundamental reasons for the existence of the Supreme Court is state to state lawsuit goes directly to the Supreme Court. Like that's the point of that. That's like one of the clearly delineated functions of the Supreme Court. And they're like, no, we don't. There's no standing. The states don't have standing to file a lawsuit with us. Like, I guess they'll say in our court, like, what do you mean they don't have standing? They don't have standing? What the hell is standing?
They merit, don't they, for any kind of potential case or whatever? Isn't that how they deny it? They have so many they can take or whatever, and so if it doesn't have merit,
no. Those are in relation to cases that have been appealed to them. A state suing another state. So when Texas sued Pennsylvania,
because where else would it go?
Well,
right?
actually, it wasn't just Texas. It was like I think it was 24 states sued Pennsylvania, and one of the provisions in the Constitution, in terms of the purpose of the Supreme Court, is that basically it was like, well, normal courts can't oversee state to state, like a state suing another state. So all of those cases it's like the Supreme Court is the first court for that is the district court, right, for state versus state lawsuits. And they said that Texas and the other 24 states didn't have standing to have their case heard by the Supreme Court. It's like, well, by you saying that, you're saying that not only are you not going to hear it, that there's literally nowhere where it can be heard. I mean,
how did they do that? Is there some precedent for that?
Well, they did exactly what happens in district courts and a lot of political stuff. They say, oh, well, nothing has happened yet, therefore you can't, there's going to be no merit to the case because the accusation you're making hasn't occurred yet. And then what did they do when they just dismissed the cases a couple weeks ago? They said, oh, well, it's already happened, so it's moot, so therefore we're not going to hear it again either. And it's the exact same tactic that happens in lower courts all the time on the local level in politics. Oh, sorry, well, the accusation you're making hasn't happened yet, so you don't have standing. And then, again, after the election, oh, well, yeah, it might have happened, but
we can't reverse the outcome.
Yeah. Which is also complete bovine scatology, because there's many, 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 many examples and precedents of courts forcing or nullifying an election result and then forcing a re-election. It's like there's
we gotta make some
precedent for this stuff, right? It's like, okay,
there's got to be change, man. I feel like is what happened they organized changing the way we vote on such a level and guaranteed it would happen that way and then prepared for it. I don't know that there's fraud per se, but just the method that they implemented was strategic.
Well, the fact that they won't investigate, they won't examine the accusations indicates to me that there was fraud. Like if they had nothing to hide, they would have gone to Linwood and all those people and said, no, you've got nothing. You're idiots, because there's absolutely nothing there. But they know there's something there, so they won't listen to it. They
designed it so you couldn't verify it after the fact in a lot of cases is the problem.
Yeah, which is why they tried to deal with it before, but, that got ignored as well. By now, the founding fathers of the USA would have revolted. You would be in a civil war already if they were still alive. And if they, if the USA still had the heart and the integrity that it had when they rebelled against the British, it would have done so by now, possibly 50 or more years ago. But this is the problem. People go, and there's so many squishy conservatives in inverted commas that there's no one, like, no one would get away with it, because the people that then revolted would be called the terrorists. That's how this is being set up. That they would get broken up into little groups, and they would get, slowly broken down. It's impossible anymore, as far as I can tell, without a miracle. But this has been in planning for decades. So Karl Marx said, socialism, the workers will rise up against the masters. World War I proved that was wrong. People fought for their country. So workers were killed by, their officers. They killed each other. The lower classes killed each other for their country. So then what happened after that? After World War I, they started, some socialists went, we'll add nationalism in. And that became fascism. And then Nazism. But other socialists went, no, we want to hang on to this communist dream. We don't want to add nationalism in. So what we'll do is divide people even further. And they actually learned a bit from Hitler, because Hitler did this to a great degree. He was a brilliant, not just brilliant at speaking, but he was also brilliant in managing to worm his way through with his tiny little group, so that it grew a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and divided all of the opposition against each other, so that they weren't united in opposition to him. And the communists learned from this, and the Frankfurt School, the neo-Marxists, what they came up with was, let's not just divide society by bourgeoisie and proletariat. Let's also divide society by gender. Let's divide them by race. Let's divide them in every conceivable way we can think of. And they keep adding new things. So the more divided a society is, the less it can unify against the common enemy. And they've succeeded. Then they've marched through the institutions, university, media, political parties, even the Republican Party. Most of them are squishy conservatives at best, if not outright leftists by any reasonable standard.
Critical theory.
Yeah, and they've succeeded brilliantly.
The worst thing about critical theory is you can't argue against it. They don't make an argument. They just assert things and shame people.
Yes.
You cannot debate it. They don't want to debate. It's not formulated to be a debate. It's to beat people down and back and feel bad about something, and it's really bad.
If you disagree with them, they just abuse you. They call you a sexist, bigot, racist, homophobe. They pull out every name, and they just assert that their position and their standing is right, and you're a Christian, so therefore you're a religious bigot.
Graham, we're not far behind America.
Oh, absolutely.
Well.
I think we're worse than America.
Yeah.
The only thing protecting us is that America is still standing, and it hasn't completely collapsed. As soon as they collapse, we're gone.
I totally agree there. Yeah.
We've got nothing. Both of our parties are even more given over. Both of our major parties and most of the minor parties are even more given over to socialism than even the Republicans.
I agree. I was following a little bit of the American politics, specifically, I think it was Nevada or Wyoming, with those 177,000 on the voter roll. They weren't supposed to be there, and what's happening with that? I sort of lost track of it.
Who knows? I mean, right now, like in Arizona, for example, they literally found huge amounts of the ballots in a shredded in a dumpster. Because like there's an audit supposed to go down, and like they're gonna go back and hand count a lot of things, and they just found a whole like huge piles of them shredded in a dumpster. Okay, so there's been lawsuits going on. The state legislature has been having hearings about, and are we gonna have the audit? Are we not gonna have the audit? And it's like, so you're telling me that while you're a focus of a national investigation, like national like journalism coverage and such, inside of the government investigation, you're telling me that just you thought it would be okay to shred the ballots? Like,
part of the problem is the way the states work with voting. Each state has its own rules, and they manage that with their own courts or whatever. So, because if we have one kind of voting that's national, then there's really issues that could come up with fraud and stuff. So that's part of the separation of the.
Well, no, I know that. I mean, I'm totally fine with the various states having their own thing. I'm talking about in the I'm talking about the election commissions inside of Maricopa County in Arizona.
Oh, right.
While the Arizona legislature is having an investigation going on, and there's litigation, and it's prior to the legal provision for them to destroy the ballots post-election, they shred them. It's like, you have nothing to hide. Really? There's nothing to
Yeah.
hide.
And they get away with it.
Were forced on all states to prevent that sort of thing, just like general rules for validation purposes.
Well, the irony is that the H1 bill. I mean, they want to make a federal law that you're not allowed to demand ID. I mean, in what
of course they do.
universe does it make sense? Like, you're going to make it the federal law that you're not allowed to make people identify themselves before they vote. I mean,
well, you're just trying to stop colored people from voting, is what they say. It's like, dude, it's ID. I think everybody can handle that.
No, man.
Well, India has universal ID for voting. India. There's a lot more poor people in India than there is in America.
There's very, very poor countries in Africa that are using biometrics for voting. Like, you have to scan your freaking eyeball and your thumb. They have like dual authentication biometric scanning for voting in some of the countries in Africa. Like, if you're telling, I'm sorry, if poverty-stricken third world countries in Africa have somehow managed to get biometric scanners as a component of that, I'm not suggesting we need to do that. I'm just saying, like, if they're being able to get to that point, you're telling me that the UK, Australia, Germany, France, the United States, you're telling me that we somehow can't? Like, I mean, I don't know how many probably aren't aware of Jet's Pizza. It's like I think it's a Southern franchise, but at Jet's Pizza, in order for the employee to take your order, they have to scan their thumb in order to be able to have access to the system to take your order at a freaking restaurant. You're telling me, so we've got thumb scanners for the hospitality worker at a pizza place, and you're telling me we can't figure out how to do this, have some kind of ID. It's just ridiculous. But
it's being done deliberately. They've planned this for ages. I have to rush off. Unfortunately, I've been loving this. This is awesome, but they're deliberately doing this. The only hope for America is revival, and same here in Australia. Pretty much the whole world. We need to get on our knees. We need to repent. We need to plead with God. Please rescue us. And he may not. This may be it. It may be over. But you know, while we're still here, let's pray that this can turn around. And it's the only way that I can see it turning around is revival.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with that too. Even the Bible says, "Call upon the Lord, and He will heal your land."
Yes. I got to go. See you guys. Thanks for having me.
Have a go, Graham.
See you, Graham.
See you, buddy.
My father used to quote that verse all the time. If my
Ben Carson
people,
too.
If my people who are called by my name will, was it something? Repent of their turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear their prayers and I will heal their land, or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. You got it. Have you guys seen that Ben Carson prayer breakfast speech right in front of Obama before?
Oh yes, I did.
It's
yes,
so
that
good.
was epic.
It's like his second time doing it, or his third time. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, it was amazing, man. Ben Carson was very impressive. Is a very impressive man.
Yeah, I was hoping he was gonna. I didn't want Trump to win at first, and I was voting for. He started to take the lead for a second there, and I was excited. But he's kind of like my hero growing up.
Yeah, Ben Carson, very. People like him is what. And another woman, a woman I've worked with. I worked on her two of her political campaigns, and she was a client of mine. An African American woman, Dr. Carol Swain. Amazing woman. She came from literally being born in a dirt floor house in West Virginia to being in the hospital from a drug overdose, single mom, had an abusive relationship, all that kind of stuff, had dropped out of high school, and then went back, got her GED, got her bachelor's, master's, PhD. Then she ended up teaching at Princeton, and then ended up retiring as a professor of law at Vanderbilt. And it's like when you look at these people that drug themselves up from nothing, had those moments of realization that, hey, they do live in the land of opportunity, and it was up to them to seize the day and, make something happen with them for themselves, and then did it,
really,
and then accomplished it. And then the fact that people like her and Dr. Carson and others are ostracized and vilified, not necessarily by like minority groups. I mean, some, but they're vilified by elitists, and I'm like,
Yeah.
like when I helped Carol run for mayor of Nashville, she got attacked so viciously by the Democrats and just the lefties in general, and I'm like, it was amazing. Myself and this other guy, we on her, she ran for a special election, and we had a very small team. We decided like, hey, let's help her do it. Let's go, and we were being accused of being racists for, I'll never forget this. I'm like, so I'm being accused as a white guy. I'm being accused of being racist for helping a black female single mother from poverty to success. I'm the racist for supporting her, while you are literally calling her a house N-word. Like you jokers are publicly saying this about her, and then accusing me of being a racist. Oh,
it's like all politics.
It's so bizarre, man.
About race, it's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I got into it with some, and what was amazing is some of the people that were saying the most vicious things were currently elected officials, and
it's disgusting.
I got into it with a couple of them. It was some pretty interesting. There were some pretty interesting confrontations, how we say, at the city hall, of between myself and a couple of other folks. Are just like, you little soy boys run around talking this mad game, and you think that nobody's ever going to call your ass out publicly and get in your face and be like, this isn't about like violence, but like, I'm not going to let you just say all this crap and then like get called out publicly. Like, you guys are so used to living in your little bubbles, and I'll never forget the look on this one little joker's face I had ongoing beef with about some other stuff too from a political action committee I was involved in. And he and I got into it in the like big old hallway, like outside of the city hall room. And it was so, you could tell a look on his face, like he had never anticipated that I would come to City Hall with the express purpose of publicly accusing him of being a bought and paid for lobbyist in front of all of his peers. And because irony of ironies, like Tennessee has a provision, how this got passed, I don't know, but elected officials are allowed to be kind of like the city council in Nashville and stuff. It's like a part-time job, like it's not a full-time deal, right? So you're allowed to have a normal job as well. But there was an exception, like you're allowed to be a freaking paid lobbyist and an elected official simultaneously. And I'm like, what is happening right now? So the bill that you're sponsoring and all this money you're trying to do and the taxes you're trying to raise on us directly, not indirectly, they directly benefit on a massive level your employer. And by employer, I mean your client, your only client, as a registered lobbyist. Like, you're trying to tell me there's nothing to see here? Nothing to see here? Like, God, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Dr. Carson, lead surgeon at Johns Hopkins, and he like famously separated twins at the head. Like some of the first times people did that and saved both the twins' lives, and some really cool stories about that. And he, I think he invented the what is it, like the what do they call it? A hemispherectomy or something, where they remove half the brain. If they do that when the child's like first born, you can develop into pretty much a totally normal person as long as you're young enough.
So he was part of it.
Yeah, right. He was part of a team that did it, of course.
Yeah, but they say he was instrumental in it too. But he was also 33. So at 33, he was the youngest head of neurology anywhere.
That's saying something very significant, since a huge portion of neurosurgeons are barely out of training. at 33.
Yeah, right. And he's the youngest creationist.
Yeah, and it's got a great book. Gifted Hands is the name of the book if you can get your hands on it, unless they want to put that one out of print as well.
Yeah, there's a.
I was going to be a brain surgeon when I grew up.
Yeah, those. It's truly amazing what they're able to do now. It's. I mean, I have a scar on the side of my head, a testament to the proficiency of neuro.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, it's. I think my scar is like. It's like 6.5 inches, maybe 7.
Wow.
Have you got a metal plate, John, or?
Yeah, I got a titanium plate that's out of med.
So what happens when you go through one of those airport detectors?
Nothing.
Titanium isn't magnetic.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that thankfully nothing happened. Yeah, I kind of freaked out about that because I was
non-ferrous.
Am I gonna have to have like MRI? If I ever have an MRI again, am I gonna like the side of my head gonna get sucked out? You know? And they're like, no, you don't get nothing to worry about that. So.
Well, either that or they hand scan you with the wands.
Yeah.
That's what they do for me. See, I've got rods in my femurs, and so whenever I go through, I've only done it once, but going through airport scanners, they just scan me with the wands.
Ah, gotcha.
Oh, that's right. Maybe it can be with really sensitive detectors, but it's not magnetic like steel or iron or whatever.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the rods are usually titanium.
Yeah, titanium is the only steel the body doesn't reject.
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is. They've tried everything. Stainless steel just falls apart. So titanium is the only way to go.
Oh, I've never. I mean, I've flown quite a bit, and since my surgery, I say quite a bit, probably like 6 or 7 times, and I've never
set it off.
I've never had an issue. Well, I've always gone through the. I haven't set it off, and a lot of times I've done like the stand up ones, where it like goes around you or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And I wonder if those are like. And I've never had an issue, so. I've gotten searched for other stuff before, but not for that.
Sometimes if you tell them ahead of time you have that sort of thing, just to be safe, they might like when you said they just did it with the hand scanners. Did you try the other way and then they did that, or did you tell them and then they just went straight to that? Because sometimes that could be.
I told them, I think. Remembering.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, if you went through the other thing, they probably wouldn't have even noticed it. But I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to risk setting it off. That's the problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Guys, it stopped raining here, so it's a good time for me to take my dog for a walk. John, I look forward to your 1-year anniversary party. When is that, by the way?
I don't know. I keep moving it, but I keep pushing it back. I keep having stuff come up that's been getting in the way, and then. Today I was like, man, I'd rather do a Dr. Tour review than a party. So it'll come up at some point. I got to.
Hey George, is it summer over there?
We've just come out of summer. We're into almost the second week of March, which is our autumn. So we've had a very mild summer, and it looks like we might have a cold winter like the Northern Hemisphere went through.
What's a mild summer like? Like what kind of high?
Okay, well, if I'll talk in Fahrenheit, right? If you consider 100-degree Fahrenheit as a hot day where you have to turn your air conditioner on, we probably put our air conditioners on probably six days this summer, whereas we might have it on about 12, 15 times.
Okay, that's amazingly hot for me in Seattle. We're lucky to have a 90-degree day in the summer.
Oh yeah, well, like I said, we're expecting that cold snap that the Northern Hemisphere got, and so we're ready. I've got the gas heater maintained and ready to go. So hopefully nothing will go wrong in terms of the gas supply, like with Germany and what is it, the pipeline in America as well. So I heard Texas was all frozen up.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, there you go, green power, eh? Reliable.
Reliable to fall apart.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just Googled it. So, because like I said, I'm very curious. Like, I've never set one off, so, and I've been through quite a few. Okay, so titanium is non-ferrous, so non-iron based, so it has an extremely low magnetic field. So minute that titanium is widely considered a non-magnetic metal. Therefore, airport metal detectors are not set off. However, it's all based on the density. So I would imagine, like, potentially
how thick it is.
Yeah, and probably also how much it overlaps, right? Like if you have multiple like if you have like I've got a small plate. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It's probably not that. I doubt it's very thick, right? So it's probably not enough to set anything off. But
that's
but depending on how big your if your femurs, I mean, those are big bones. First off, so there's no telling how big those the rods that would be for broken femurs would be, right? So it could be that is big enough or enough of it.
Oh yeah, like a hip replacement.
Yeah. I mean,
well, I mean, I'm a 6-foot man, so I've got that. My hip is also plated and screwed. But as I alluded to before, Ravi Zacharias had the problem with his back, which meant he had titanium all through his back.
Wow, that's gotta be bad.
Which was part of the reason why he was forced to go to the relaxing spas that he owned and get treatment for it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was always complaining about his back there before the end, if I recall.
Oh, I don't know about that, but he's mentioned it several times during his speeches.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
All right, well, gentlemen,
anyway.
I think it is getting close to time. It's almost 1 a.m. my time. I gotta.
Oh wow!
I gotta call it.
It's gonna rain for me here.
John, what time is it there now? Like 12?
It's
almost 12.
It's 12:45.
Oh wow! So you're 4 hours ahead of me.
No, you're in Seattle, right?
Yeah, it's 10:50.
It's 3 hours.
Oh, you cut out. What's that?
No, I mean Seattle's. You're on Pacific time, right?
Yeah, PS. Yep.
Yeah, that's only 3 hours difference.
Well, my phone says 10:50, so I don't know.
Anyway,
skipping a one. Hey.
It's 12:46 my time. 11.
Must be 4 then, right?
Is that right? Guys go. I'll catch you later.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
See you, Andrew.
Nice to meet you.
You're saying it's 10:45 or 10:50 your time, right?
That's on my it's 10:50 right now on my phone, so that should be automatically updating. So I don't know.
So I'm on Central Time. Are you on Mountain Time? You're on Mountain Time.
No, I'm on Pacific. Like James from MDD is on, I think, because he's in Colorado, and that's
he's only an hour different from me.
What? No, I thought he was 1 hour ahead of me. Maybe it's 2.
No, he's 1 hour ahead.
Well, even if it's 2, if he's only 1 behind you, that doesn't make any sense.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how is it? It's not 10:50 your time.
Maybe my phone's like frozen or something.
Your phone's wrong because like there's only 4 options in the continental United States: Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. And I'm in Central.
And you're not the furthest east. Okay. Well, that's weird. I thought my phone automatically updates it, so I don't know. I'll check on that.
Like Mountain Time would be 11. Like right now, it's showing me. Right, I'm saying 12:47 my time. So Mountain's gonna be 11:47, and Pacific.
Yeah, that's only 2 hours. 12:40.
Yeah.
Wait. You're 12:47. That's only 2 hours. We're just thinking. That's only 2. It's 10:50 here and it's 12:50 there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's 2.
You kept saying 3.
Sorry, man. I was totally thinking wrong.
I'm like, what are you talking about? No, it's not.
I see what you're saying.
Now, if I
was man.
Now, Sal, it's 1:48 for Sal because he's on Eastern time.
Because he's on the East Coast. Yeah, I wanted to add 4 hours to that for some reason. I don't know why. My brain farted.
I have no idea what the time is, and like I don't know how many time zones there are between like Pacific and Hawaii.
I think it's like 3 hours. I swear it was. Maybe it's just 2. I can't think of. Well, it's probably about the same distance as Nashville from here. I guess it's like a 7-hour flight or 5 hours at least.
Let's see. What time is it in Hawaii?
Check.
No, it's 8:48 in Hawaii right now.
Okay, so it's 2 then. Also, yeah, I guess right.
So another 2 hours for you. Yeah, so it's 4 hours for me.
So I was talking to Gavin the other day, and he was like 17 hours ahead of me.
Yep.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Because they got remember you have the international date line that's being crossed over too. So it's not only 17 hours; it's like they're a day ahead of us.
Yeah, he's into the next day, right? Ahead of me. So wait, but I would think. Okay, tell me where I'm thinking wrong here. But I would think the exact opposite side of the Earth would be 12 hours behind, wouldn't it? And then anything else, because the day is 24 hours, so why wouldn't like the direct other side be 12 hours apart? Am I thinking wrong there? It seems like that's what it should be.
Well, theoretically, but you also have to remember like you're having to account for the time zone. The time zones aren't exact.
Yeah, for one.
And then number 2, you have to account for the curvature of the Earth. So like, depending on your latitude.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
The sun's going to be coming up at a different time, right? Based on your latitudinal position. And
but I mean,
like for example, like here, and I know, like if I go due north, I will on 65. I will run into. I get up in just past Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is about 40 miles north of. Well, it's about 50 miles north of Nashville. You go into Eastern time zone, even though you've gone due north.
Is that Ohio? You said?
Not in Kentucky.
Right. Oh,
I mean, I'm talking like you go across. So Nashville's about like 40 miles from the Kentucky-Tennessee border, and then Bowling Green is like another like 15 miles, right? And
is it pretty central in Tennessee from west to east? Can't remember.
Was Nashville?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nashville's like dead center of Tennessee.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I remember my capitals.
I mean, you just go due north, and you're not very long. You're in Kentucky. And
yeah, that's right.
You keep going north, like so you're not like going east or west. You're going due north, and then it turns into Eastern Daylight Time. However,
weird. Oh, because it's not a straight line.
Right. But however, if you go east towards Knoxville, you have to drive like over 150. It's like 130 miles before you get into the Eastern Time Zone. Going due east.
Towards where?
Going towards Knoxville. So you're driving due east. I'm talking like you're driving east for I mean, not south. I'm talking east for over 100 miles before it goes into Eastern time zone. But you go 60 miles due north, and you're in Eastern time zone.
So it must follow the border, right? It follows the state border, then, kind of.
Nope. It's like
and then cuts north.
I think some of it has to do with the latitudinal shift, obviously north versus east, but other part of it's just like a marginally arbitrary line.
Yeah,
not completely arbitrary, but like not even close to being exact, right? And yeah, it's
so that's kind of like a little L turn there, just north of you kind of deal, or the other way around.
Well, and then you have to think about too, like other stuff, like Arizona doesn't recognize daylight savings time. So that gets weird for part of the year, right? And there's like all that stuff's crazy, but okay, I do have to go to bed. And before I go, everybody, and let me do last words. So, folks, I have been rolling out some finally at long last. Started putting together some merch, T-shirts, and all that kind of good stuff. And then for the launch promo, if you go there and do. Use the code LPP30. You get 30% off of the shirts, which I'm going to play a quick video so you can see some of those. And there's links for this in the description if you want to go check them out.
Beautiful.
Go check all that
I'm
stuff
gonna
out.
get one.
I think I've got one ordered for myself. The evolution, the new flat Earth. I think that
That's
one's
great.
I was
I'm
cracking
gonna
up
buy
when I
the sweater, the God Infinity one.
oh God established infinity. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, when I created that one, I was like, you know what? Simple. However, that's kind of I mean, it's a jab, obviously, a slight jab at the atheist worldview, but it's also kind of, simultaneously, it's kind of yeah, God is infinity on so many different levels, so many orders of magnitude of infinity that we don't have the ability to comprehend, but it's a
Yeah,
necessity.
I need a sweatshirt
But
too.
sidebar, for Call of Night, we do last words. Um, the Darth Dawkins on Neff today was hilarious.
Oh, you saw that?
Oh man, I was getting massive entertainment listening to that one. That was
Yeah, I got irritated. I was friendly with him, but he took over his show thing, and I asked him like nicely to like to remember that it's somebody else's channel, and he just got more aggressive, and then finally I was like, Neff, you should do something, and I just left.
yeah, he would definitely took things over, but I mean it was interesting to listen to him for a while. I don't know if you saw me inside chat. I was like asking questions of like who is more obnoxious, Soldier of Science or Brenda? The
Yeah.
like prediction, Soldier of Science will go in. Like I kept like predicting like different things he was gonna say, and be like, I'm talking like 2 minutes later, he would say exactly what I was predicting. It was cracking me up. I've interacted with him before. There's no point. He's a complete clown job. He's a clown show, total clown show.
Oh, I know. He acts like he's like actually genuine or whatever, curious, but he's like it's a game. And I didn't realize Brenda was actually male at first. I wasn't sure anyway. Like, and so I'm like, why is everybody calling him saying he or something? And then I was like, oh, duh.
Oh yeah, I was actually kind of surprised. Usually when somebody does that, Brenda goes off on him and like wants to have the appropriate response. Brian F. Yes, Sal does have a channel. He's got multiple. You have to watch out for all of Sal's sock accounts. Like if you make him mad, he'll come in and like just attack you with his sock account. But no, he's got Evidence and Reasons, and he's got the Evidence. Is the Evidence and Reasons Academy? Is that the other?
Yeah, Evidence and Reasons is the main channel, and it really started coming online back in June. I haven't grown quite as fast as yours. And then I have a really tiny channel of just 33 subscribers right now, Evidence Reasons Academy, where I teach basic math, science, chemistry, physics, and biology. At least that's the plan. I have 6 chemistry lectures there and 1 molecular biology lecture so far, and I'll keep moving. So thank you very much for the interest. I'm going to provide links right now. So thank you for your interest, Brian. So just give me a moment here and I'll give you some links.
Right on. Well, while Sal's pulling it up, Jamie, you want to have last word?
God did it. All of it.
Well, that's a very short and pithy explanation of the obvious. I agree. It's amazing how people don't want to just accept what is common sense, what is the most reasonable expectation, and inference to the best explanation for our existence. But Sal, any last words before we call it a night?
Just wanted to say thank you very much for the open mics. It was very comforting last night. It helped me. It lifted my spirits as I was finishing a paper that's been just weighing on me. So I finished the project this afternoon. So thanks to you.
Well, not a problem. You're always welcome, and I appreciate you very much. Keep everything up. And folks, as we, obviously we had some good humor tonight. We got the chance to poke some fun at Wannabe Professor Dave, and got to listen to a towering intellect take his time to explain some of the basics to us all, and to expound upon the underlying principles and the reasons that people like himself, are calling into question these pieces, these talking points that have been being spewed with such, levels of extreme confidence as being proven beyond all doubt that we are on the path to understanding and all these different things in relation to abiogenesis, when it's not only is that not the case, it's the polar opposite. Is the actual stark reality in which the origin of life research world is finding itself. And, as Dr. Tours talked about, as Dr. Stadler's talked about, as Dr. Chan's talked about, Change Tan and all these different folks for years have been discussing the premise of at what point do we recognize that this is not a remotely coherent nor plausible explanation for our existence. And it's not that we should cease to investigate the underpinnings and the intricacies and the complexities of what enables life to exist. In fact, it would be the polar opposite. We should actually be more excited, more intrigued, and more dedicated to developing understanding of what went into our very existence, what genius, what creative power, and what was the level of knowledge and execution of the laws of physics and chemistry, information, all these different components that make life possible. What was actually required in order to make all of these things work in unison? And so I just ask, as if you're an atheist or an agnostic or a hardcore Evo or a theistic evolutionist who's kind of buying into the propaganda, take the time to go and look for yourself. Look past the talking points. Don't allow them to just be like, oh, we got this solved. And anybody who says otherwise is just some God of the gaps argument of incredulity person running around who doesn't know what they're talking about. No, it's the opposite. It's the opposite now, folks. Let's be focused. Let's be open-minded. Let's be critical thinkers and really search for the correct answers to the most fundamental components of anything that we can ask, which is how do we exist? And as you pursue the evidence, I ask that you all take the time to run it through the filters I always talk about, and that is to make sure that your ultimate conclusions are logical, plausible, and ultimately have any semblance of probability being a reasonable conclusion. Have a great night, y'all.